All right. Hopefully we're live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to stream number 22. Goes pretty quickly. Sorry about missing my stream last week. It was my wife's birthday, so we had to obviously do some fun family things. And we actually had a really good little weekend outing. Went to a nice restaurant on Friday, and then we went on a little trip on Saturday. Going to do what do they call it? Oh, I forgot the name of the. It's like this place where they've got all these walkways and zip lines and all that stuff all hooked up high in the trees in the forest. And you can basically climb into the trees and do all these ropes and fun things and scary stuff above the ground. My wife's really into that sort of stuff, so she had a great time. So that was pretty good. Hi Christian, nice of you to join us from Germany. Hi SSLX, always nice to see you too. Let me get some water. So last stream we had a lot of fun working on the OpenXR plugin. I actually did a lot of work since then, but I can't share it at this point in time, which is a bit of a pain in the butt. I actually got the hands that we were working on last stream completely working, and that's all pretty cool. So that is the approach where we are using meshes. Actually, I can open it up, I think, without getting into trouble. The problem is that I'm using, for the skeleton-based model, all that logic is working as well, but I'm using a mesh that isn't yet available for consumption. That needs to still be a license needs to be given out for that to be used. So hopefully I can share that pretty soon. Just having a look at. That's interesting. Am I on the wrong? I'm on the wrong branch, I think. Hang on for a sec. You see, that's development. Developments. XR plugins, Godot, OpenXR, get status. What branch are we on? Oh yeah, I was working on all the workflows thing. Actually, that's good to share as well. This is something. That is so cool. I am so impressed with this. Obviously, people who use GitHub a lot and work with GitHub workflows are probably think that this is all pretty much basic stuff. But I am pretty impressed by it. I'm going to the OpenVR repository for this because our good friend Ben did all this work. I've just stolen his work and applied it to the OpenXR plugin, so hopefully that will be merged soon and we'll have the same thing. But basically, every time that you do a pull request, I don't have a good example here because these are all too old for it. I can probably look at the original pull request that he did. I can actually have a look at that one. So what you'll see... Oh, it doesn't show it when it's already merged. That's a shame. But basically, it compiles the plugins. Maybe I can just force one here. These are all old. I need to double check them. Anyway, it compiles them and you can just download just the DLLs from all the different platforms. But when you merge into master, that's when the real cool stuff happens. So if you go to the main page, you'll see that there is a releases section here. And if you go to releases, right now, both of them are the pre-releases. Do we have tags here? Yeah. That's just the normal tags. So once we start fully using this, there will be an official latest release here, like a stable release. But these are both automatic builds based on, certain merges. And you can actually go down here to the assets, and you can either download the source code as it was at that point in time, or more importantly, you can download this zip file. And when I do that, I'm probably going to have another zip file here because I've downloaded this before, but it's cool to see. Come on. Yeah, you can see I've already done this before. But we now have the full plugin with all the things in there, including all the compiled versions. So we have our OS X compile here, our Windows compile here, and our XLF compile here. So whenever anything gets merged into master, we build the actual plugin in its entirety, and you can just download it, extract it, add it to your project, and finished. Done. I'm actually going to talk to the guys at Godot and sort of wonder, talk to them and wonder if we can use this to plug it directly into the asset library, so that we don't actually need the special asset library repository. We can just get it from these releases. So, hi RKB, hey Andre, groeten uit Brussel. Well, depends, of course. Are you from the Dutch part of Germany, or Brussels, or are you from the French part? I think Brussels is right on the border, isn't it? Or, I can't remember. It's been way too long since I've last been in Belgium. I used to, actually, fun fact, I was born on the border between Holland and Belgium, just on the Dutch side of the border. But I lived the first 8 years of my life right on the border of Holland and Belgium. So I'm a Brabander. So yeah, I just wanted to share that for anybody who's missed that news or missed that update. That yeah, we can download that, and like I said, we've done the same thing for OpenXR, but that one is not yet merged into the project. So you can see here, it's that project, if I recall correctly. Has someone replied on this yet? No. So it's all ready to go. Everything compiles. You can see that we get all the compiles here. The nice thing at that point in time, I think if you just let me see. Yeah, I think if you just go to details here, first of all, you see whether the compile is correct. But you also have this option here, artifacts, and you can download the artifacts. Obviously on the OpenVR, we have 3 artifacts. We have on OS X, Linux, and Windows. For OpenXR, we just have Linux and Windows. There's no OS X support for OpenXR yet. Hopefully that'll come at some point in the future. But yeah, you can download it, and this one only contains the DLL. It doesn't contain the whole asset. It just contains the DLL. So you need to download the latest asset and then add these DLLs into it. But it means that everything's compiled for you. You don't have to compile these things locally anymore. Once this is merged into master, and any PR that is merged into master from then on will automatically result in the plugin to be made available as a release. And you can see there's no releases here yet because we haven't done that yet. Ah, okay. Well, I have some family members who speak Portuguese, but unfortunately not me. I have been to Portugal a few times. Beautiful country. Very sunny. Long time ago, when I was still living in Europe, I worked for a software company that did telecommunication software, and we had a big client in Oporto, if I remember correctly. So I visited Oporto regularly for about half a year to set up things for that client. That was good times, good memories, a lot of fun. Okay, so we got a little bit sidetracked there because I wanted to go onto that branch, but let's go and check out my hand tracking branch. There we go, which means I can go back into here. And so I think we worked on that last week, where we had the ugly hand here without our positioning, and I think I left at the point where we could move the hand in space, but it wasn't doing the fingers. So excuse me while I grab my trusty little controller and turn it on and hit play for this thing. I'm just doing the one hand. Hopefully that will start tracking in a minute. Needs to be seen by the base stations. Come on. All right, maybe I broke the demo. That's possible. Let's double check this. Let's set up. Script is attached. Yeah. Whenever you check stuff out, always remember to recompile. Let's try that. Guns platform is Windows. Oh shit. There we go. Let's go make sure that we have the latest version. Ah, cool. So you're doing some animations in Blender. That's always fun to do. Does indeed take a little while to build on that. Hand tracking. Let's see if we have more luck this time. That's the wrong project. Sorry about that. That one. That was a test project that I was working on before I actually built all this. Alright, are we gonna go tracking? Come on, track. There we go. Do we see our hands now? Come on. Okay, this is weird. Live demos always fail. Haha. Okay, what am I missing? What am I missing? What broke? So, we've got our left hand here. We've got it on. We have our script attached. The script attached is there anything in our log that tells us something? That's just the interaction profiles. That's because we haven't built all of that yet. Hand tracking supported, so that's all good. Maybe I need to just turn both controllers on. I don't know. Oh, why is that's not good? That one needs to be on right. Actually, let me go in here. Make sure that's set here. There we go. Right. Save. So else we have the left hand or the right hand being tracked by the left hand. That wouldn't be good. So I can now reset that because that is not default. And because I was testing with the right hand, yeah, that's not going to work, is it? There we go. We have two hands. And you can see that instead of having our hands really weirdly positioned, they are actually nicely the way that they are. And they work. So yeah, that's... unfortunately didn't stream doing that last bit because before it was just doing the positioning. It wasn't doing the hand tracking yet. But yeah, all good. Now, these, like I said, are done with just meshes. And there is logic in the plugin. I'll actually quickly show how that works. It might be interesting for anybody who wants to use this. So everything is name-based here. So this is this hand is completely laid out according to the layout of the bone structure in OpenXR. And all that the plugin does by adding this script, the OpenXR hand script here, is positioning all those nodes in space. And there's a little bit of extra logic here that will ensure that the little bones in between are the right length. But as a result, you just have meshes that can move around. However, when you want to have realistic hands, you look at the hand, for instance, in Half-Life Alyx, which is a single mesh, and that is animated with a skeleton, with bones. So we've got that too, but like I said in the beginning, I can't actually show the hand yet, because the model has not been released, unfortunately. But the logic is all working actually quite well. It's pretty cool. So I hope to show that next week. But for everybody else who just wants to have a quick look, am I on the right thing here? Yes, I am. Oh yeah, that's what you get when you switch branches. You're suddenly on the wrong thing. So let's go. I want to go over here and let's go and close these off before I destroy changes that I've made. Oh, hello, David. How you going? Good morning. Where were we with its source? Here we go. So I've moved things around a little bit into folders, and I'm going to organize this a little bit more once some of the other projects are merged. But we've got our hand here, which is the logic for, you know, what that we just saw with the positioning of the meshes. But we have these four, so actually, you know, two new objects that control the hand when you're doing a skeleton. Because in this case, we have to be able to position the hand in space, and then we have to animate the skeleton of that thing. Those are two separate entities that we are affecting. That first one is done by the pose. So right now I've just hard coded that we have two poses available, the left hand pose and the right hand pose, which gives us the origin point for each hand's mesh. But eventually we'll extend this and potentially we'll make this even more generic and linked into the action system in OpenXR, so that if you have controllers with locations identified on controllers, or pucks or things like that, where you want to identify different locations, will have different poses that you can access. And this allows us to set something up in space. Now the other one that we obviously have is then the skeleton, which animates the actual skeleton of the hand itself. Going back to the hand logic, so the stuff that we were building last time, you can see that there's now some code in here that identifies all the paths, all the node paths to the individual meshes. So the naming is important. So if you want to build your own hand mesh, let's say that you want to do a robot hand, which is always nice to do in this way, you have to make sure that all these nodes are properly named, because it's on the name that we position everything. So in the initialization, we are getting all the spatial nodes so that we have those ready to use. And you can see that we are outputting some information when that is not available. And I actually need to update this because I don't know if this is in this version yet. I don't think so. Yeah, no, I already started doing that. I'm actually using the Godot print function in a lot of places now. The difference being that when you use printf, the old-fashioned printf in the std library, it will output only to the log here. While if you use Godot's internal print, you actually have the output going over here, which is easier for debugging, obviously. So that's something that I'll change before this all gets merged. And then inside of the physics process is where we're actually doing the positioning of the hands. I'm thinking about making that settable, whether you want to do this in the physics process or whether you do want to do this in the normal process. It depends a bit on whether you're running this in multitasking mode, because this is currently not multitasking safe. So there are some things still to do there. But basically all I'm doing here is looping through all the joints of the hand. This is just a little static table that identifies the parent of each joint so that I can easily get the relationship between a node and its parent. Getting our hand tracker here, checking if it's initialized, and I'm just looping through the joints and setting the transform of each joint, and that's making the movement. Hey, Terrence! Welcome from the UK. I believe you guys are in lockdown, or are you out of lockdown yet? So I hope you are staying safe, and if you're well, I hope so. So that's it for the hand. The skeleton actually works nearly identical. The difference is that now we are animating bones. I don't have to do a complete node path there because bones are identified purely by name, which is really cool. Again, I'm finding all the bones. Now, in the model that I have, we don't have a wrist, or we don't use the palm bone. The palm is our origin point of our skeleton. But I might do something with that at some point. I'm not sure yet. But it's getting all those bones, and then basically our physics process is doing almost the identical logic, with the only difference that there's a bit more going on here, because I can't just position a mesh. I actually have to, first of all, look at what the relationship is between a bone and the parent bone, and then I need to see what the difference is between the rest pose of that bone and the pose that we actually want to pose it in. So that's all the logic that's happening here, and in the end, we update our pose, and that animates the bone of the hand. So yeah, that all works pretty well. It's pretty much finished. A little bit of testing to be done. Like I said, I'm still waiting on approval that we can release the mesh that we're using, and then this will probably get merged into the OpenXR plugin. So that was exciting work. I had a lot of fun doing that. Anyway, let's go back to our project lists. Let's go and close this guy off. And I just want to go back to where I was. I am going to go. Actually, let's update both. Why not? There we go. And let's go and push that in. There we go. Because I don't want that right hand thing to be mismatched. Okie doke. Cool. And I just want to go and put this back onto my improved workflows, just in case there is something I still need to fix there before we can merge that. Okay. So that was the exciting news as far as the OpenXR plugin is concerned. So that plugin is it's getting some really nice logic in there. I think I mentioned this last stream when we actually built the start of that logic. As far as I'm concerned, that is all prototyping at this point in time. It will end up in this version of the plugin because this is the only way to expose that logic in Godot 3. If everything goes well, soon I'll start working on enhancing the core of Godot 4 so that we actually have support in the core, and instead of needing these special nodes, or some of the nodes might be implemented in the core itself, we will then expose that logic through the AR/VR interface setup, because that means that you can just apply an XR skeleton to your hand model, and it is then up to the plugins to provide the actual skeleton data, the pose data, which means that you no longer have to care whether that pose data is going to come from OpenVR or OpenXR or anything else. You just use that XR pose and XR skeleton node to set up your hand model. And it means that we can build a fallback that if hand tracking is not supported, we can do this thing that we built the stream before that, or maybe the one before that, can't remember, 2 or 3 streams ago, when we built a hand model that reacted based on inputs. So if I pull the trigger, that means that my finger moves. If I do my grip, that means my hand moves. At some point, I might even do something with the finger on the top, your thumb. I don't know, but that is something that we can actually implement in Godot itself. That is our fallback mode. That if you use the skeleton with a handset or a SDK that doesn't support finger tracking, it just does the default tracking based on inputs. We'll see. That's my current line of thinking. That's what I want to spec out, and we'll start building that sometime January next year. I probably won't have time to do anything with Godot 4 before January next year, or I might start up a few things in December and get my feet wet. But yeah, there's going to be some big changes in everything that we've learned doing the OpenVR plugin, the OpenXR plugin, doing the Oculus mobile plugins, especially the mobile one, because the Rift plugin is still pretty basic. All the more advanced things have all gone into the Oculus mobile side of life. Just take all those lessons learned and figure out a way, okay, how we're going to do it in the core so that the plugins just have to feed the right data into the core, and you as a developer no longer have to worry about how it's implemented in the plugins. You just use the core elements. That's the whole thing. Oh, it's busy on the chats. Let's catch up on the chat. Hi, Tom's Art. Glad that you are awake. You mean poses as in actually animating the hand? Not inside of Godot itself. So when we look at what we're doing here with the OpenXR plugin, obviously we're actually getting our pose data from our SDKs, because it is all based on the capacity sensors on these controllers. Or even if you have the Quest, then it's obviously you can even do the hand recognition. And I haven't tried it yet, but even the what's the thing called? the leap motion should work with OpenXR and in theory feed into this. So I should in theory be able to hook up my leap motion and use the leap motion OpenXR driver and stream that directly into Godot. So that's all using the same technology and the same approaches. So yeah, that should all work. But if you look at posing a hand yourself, if you don't have access to your any hand tracking, or you don't even want to use the controllers in that way because of whatever game you're doing, then you're really on territory where you go into Blender, set up a hand properly posed, and you use Blender's actions to create animations for each pose and then export those. Now that's what we did 2 or 3 streams ago when I did the hand that is getting inputs from the triggers. We set the hand up and the skeleton up in Blender, exported that into Godot, and did some blending with the animations to get the hand to do what we wanted to do. So that it's a bit of a long stream, but I can advise you, if you want to know how that works, check out that stream and see how we did that. Yes, I am very aware of the fact that there are really cool GUIs for Git. One of my favorite one is Turles, I think it's called. I haven't used it for a while though. I actually started using Git on a Mac using SourceTree, which is really nice as well. Then I switched onto Windows when I started to do stuff for Godot about three and a half years ago, and I started using Git Tortoise or whatever it's called, and really love to use that. And then I got serious and started doing some really cool stuff. And Akian taught me how to use the command line, and I'm not going back. I know that the graphical user interfaces give you more visual feedback on what's going on. But being able to interact with Git through the command line, I find it that you have far more control and visibility of what you're doing, and it's only a handful of commands that you really need to memorize. So, yeah, I've gone completely command line with Git. So call me old-fashioned, but I like it. If you enjoy the GUIs, perfect, right? There are a couple of really good GUIs out there, and yeah, if that makes your life easy, go for it, Hey, Declan! Tortoise was for the SVN, that's right. What was there is one for Git. There was a Git version of that. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember. Yeah, there is a Git version of Tortoise. So that's the one that I was using, which was pretty cool. Worked exactly the same as Git for SVN, but then with Tortoise for SVN, but then with Git commands. So pretty cool. Yeah. No, SourceTree is pretty good too. Isn't that Atlassian that built that one? Our good friends here in Australia. It's a good program, and yeah. But like I said, I just learned the command line version at some point in time, and I do find it easier. But then again, I'm pretty old school when it comes to that. So, heck, I still use Sublime as a text editor. I don't even go down the more proper IDEs because I don't know, crazy, I guess. All right. So, was there anything more that I wanted to talk about on the OpenXR parts? So yeah, so the hand tracking is pretty much done in its current version, and will probably be merged into Godot 3. Into the current Godot 3 version of OpenXR. The next thing that I want to work on is actually the action system. Everything around actions right now in the OpenXR plugin is hard-coded. So you can see that if I don't turn my my controllers on, OpenXR goes pretty mental for like, it's not there, I don't know what to do with it. So yeah, there's some improvement there, but that was that's just a matter of we haven't had the time to do it yet. So again, the same kind of thing goes with what I did with OpenVR, where I built something purpose-built for the plugin to support the action model. I'm going to do the same thing for OpenXR to get a good feeling about how the OpenXR action model works. And using those two, because interesting enough, Oculus didn't go down the action model route. I'm not sure why Oculus chose not to. I kind of like the simple approach that they have. I have to admit, I haven't really. I guess I really understand the action model because it makes sense if you support multiple platforms. Because it is a great way to map different type of controllers to actions in your game, so that when you're designing your game, you don't really have to worry too much about the capabilities of the different controllers that are out there. Oculus has the advantage that they have one controller. They have the touch. That's it. You know, they have different versions of the touch controller, but capability-wise, they all do the same thing. They all have the same buttons, same inputs, same tracking, so they don't need it, right? So that's one of the things that we need to solve, that if we are going to make the VR system in Godot action-based, which makes a lot of sense because we want to be in that place where you build your game in Godot and you don't care what you deploy it to, whether you deploy it to a Quest or deploy it to Steam VR, or whether you deploy it for OpenXR. You should be able to make your game without worrying about that. And the action model is really good there because you define your actions that you have in your game, and then you map those for the different controllers that you have available. And that allows you to export to any of these platforms. So we're going to have to build that into the core of Godot in a way that whether there's an action model available in whatever platform we're targeting, or whether it's not, like an Oculus and we need to simulate an action model, we'll need to see. Now, interesting enough, of course, if you're using OpenXR, that's already handled by the OpenXR layer. So we might find out that for Godot 4, OpenXR is going to be the biz. We'll see. Too early to tell. Well, David, there's nothing wrong with that. The thing, of course, with Git is really, really good when you are collaborating with other people. That's really where it shines. And it's very interesting because I've worked with a couple of people who use Git in a really primitive way because they haven't had that need to collaborate with anybody. So they skip PRs and all that sort of stuff. They just merge things into there, or push things into the master branch, which is fine if you're working by yourself and you're just using Git as either a backup system or as a way for other people to have access to what you're working on. If you want to open source your project. But if you're, if you don't work in a team, if you work by yourself and you don't want to have your source public, why not indeed back it up to Google Drive? It's free, and why not? I've been using Dropbox in that way for quite a while, where if there's any project that I don't feel comfortable uploading yet because it's not far along yet, or there's stuff in there that I want to keep private because they're licensed or whatever, zip it up and throw it onto Dropbox. Or I might even have the repo directly on my Dropbox, and because again, that's working locally and it's just being backed up automatically in the background. So yeah, why not? Nothing wrong with it. That said, I love Git. I'm a big believer in Git, and using Git as a way to do source control and to make sure you have a backup of your project. All right. Getting a bit of dry throat with all the talking. So the other news is, my daughter is getting into sim racing. It's kind of cool. So I ordered her a nice steering wheel setup. Should be coming in sometime December. And I figured that is a good reason to actually do a few more things on the little vehicle demo. We obviously got halfway through a lot of stuff when I did a stream on sort of polishing stuff up here. Unfortunately, also I found out that I screwed up a few things in checking that into the VCS. Into Git, because I didn't realize that the master branch was actually quite a bit ahead of what I was working on. So I rebased everything, pushed everything into the the repository, and I found out that there is a couple of things missing. So we're gonna debug that first tonight, get that all working, and then we're gonna see where we left off with driving our car and some of the physics issues that we were experiencing, and seeing what we can do with those. Yeah, again, it's but the big question that you have, David, is do you need versioning? I do have to admit that I find it very handy to be able to look at my previous version, especially in a situation like this, where I've lost something, and I might need to recover some files from an earlier branch. But other than that, the backup really is important for in case, you've got something happening here on your local machine and you suddenly lose files. So yeah, it's all, what are your needs, and what meets your needs. So. And I don't think there is a good or bad or anything there. All right, so one of the things that I found out was when I opened up our little test track, it was saying that my terrain texture is missing. And I wonder if the same thing happens right now if I open up this guy. Yeah, missing the exact same material. And that is because I renamed a bunch of these folders. And then it turned out that in the master branch that was way ahead, things weren't renamed. And that's something that Git doesn't really do well. When you try to rebase something and you've done some weird things with moving folders around, it does tend to get confused of what is leading and what is trailing. Especially if you don't pay attention in your merge decisions, your conflict resolve. So, now one thing that is interesting is that I don't know whether I've actually completely lost this, because here's my guardrail thing. So let's say I have a look, and that's on my private one. I really need to rename this repo at some point in time. So that's still on our OpenXR. This is the old one. So here you can see that assets is with a capital A. And here are our materials, and here we have our terrain texture. So let's go and see if we can actually download that. Should be able to do that with, oh well, I'll do it like this. Why not? Let's go back into this guy. Do I have one for this? My tutorials, here we go. I could probably download or save that file. It's probably smarter. Actually, let's go and say there's no save. There's no save. Okay, then we're just gonna go back here, and we're gonna say save link as. There we go. See development tutorials, vehicle assets, materials. We probably need far more than that, but let's see if we can get started with this. I'm gonna open up my test scene first. There we go. So obviously we're missing our material, and our material is using textures that are missing. Now in this case, I think those textures are actually available, which means that I actually need to go and open up my material. Here we go. There we are. Fix dependencies. So interesting enough, it can find this one. That's weird. Why can it find that one and not the other one? So this might have to do with the fact that on Windows, it's not too bothered by capitals and stuff. I think it's that one. That's a normal one. Okay, so we are indeed missing files here. But I also want to fix this up. And the thing is, because we have these issues with uppercase and lowercase, I'm actually going to go and fix that one behind the scenes. That's the wrong one. I want to close you so that I don't get confused. You can see that I was fixing things up already. So we're going to go and edit our materials here, and we're going to make sure that that is a lowercase a, that is a lowercase a. And now we're going to go and see which files we're missing. So we're going to go in textures here. Look at that. We're missing a whole bunch of them. Can I just download? You know what? I think the best thing to do is just to clone that in a separate folder. Do I still have that somewhere? Wouldn't be surprised if I already cloned it at some point in time. No, but we're just going to put it in my temp folder here. Clone. And if we just grab our root, we will get our master without all our changes in it. And this is a bit of a big download, so let's give that... Oh, that's actually a lot faster than I thought. Not complaining. Long live fast internet. So here are all our textures. Where's my development folder? Tutorials. I can't see the wood for the tree. Acids. So we've already moved our HDR Haven into its own folder. That was one of the things that I wanted to change. Now the other thing that I need to see is, did I move these into textures.com? That's possible. So I got our roads here. I got our rocky grass here. There we go. So maybe our problem is that we actually need to use the right path. So let's go and change this to textures.com. We do the same here. And then we need to go. Okay. Oh, that's the, oops. That's the wrong one. I just need to go and copy that. And we're going to put that in front, like so. And then I think I removed that from the name. No, I did not remove that from the name. Okay. I'll not screw that up. Okay. So now when I load this one, it actually goes right. Now, the interesting thing that I now want to find out is, can I delete the textures that we have here? So that's the one that we just used, because that should not be used from here anymore. Perfect. Because that was moved. So can I remove this one? Yes, I can. So those are both not used anymore. Good. I can go and delete that folder. Cool. All right. Let's see if we can now finally... Yeah, now we can finally load our test scene. Perfect. That is working fine. All right. Now let's see if we can also load our bigger track. And that is now also loading without any errors. Now the other thing that keeps failing on me, which is really interesting. So either I did not check that in, but for some reason the default environment keeps going missing. Let's go and put that in as well. And that brings our default environment back. But sometimes that's just suddenly disappeared. Ground is just a ground plane. We don't actually have a ground texture. That's really interesting as well. I thought I put one in. There we get that as well. So now we got some lighting going on, which is kind of nice. All right, let's see if we can actually play this thing. See if it works. All right. So we can still drive our car. Perfect. All right. Now that that's fixed, I actually want to go and safeguard those changes. No. There we go. Going to overwrite this stuff. There we go. So that anybody who downloads our demo actually gets a working demo. Kind of nice. Now, I'm still no closer to understanding why, after we put our gear logic in, that it was misbehaving as much as it was. So that's something that I actually want to start looking into. What did it think? Oh, it's just because we moved the camera. All right. So let's go have a look at our cars. That's our track base. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I really need to reorganize a few of these things. That's right. I had my car scene in here. All right. And this is the other thing that I find interesting that I'm not quite sure yet what to do about. What I really want to do is create a base scene for our cars, and all the cars that we have to have them inherit from that base scene. The problem that I'm having is that we're getting a lot of the setup of the car from our GLTF import. So unless I make my root nose a spatial and then expect the GLTF to be loaded into a vehicle node and we just add that control, we can't really do it that way. Now, the way that I've done it right now, that I'm always inheriting from this script, might just be enough. Maybe I just need to accept that. I guess that's just where I need to stick, what I need to stick by right now. But I'm still not sure whether I think that is really the right way forward. I don't think we're going to fix that one tonight. I don't think that we're going to answer that one tonight. We're just going to stick with the car that we have. And at some point I need to figure out, okay, how can I make sure that we have all these different cars that all have the same base logic, but have their own properties? And have an easy way to set that up. Because one of the things that, of course, is going to be interesting is once we have additional nodes in here, and we actually already have them, like the lights. Now, these are very dependable on the actual car that we have. But there might eventually be things inside of the car that all the cars share and that I want to have as placeholder nodes like we have with our space game for controller input there. I need to see that. David, yes. That is definitely my plan. Right now, I am concentrating on my live streams because my personal life has become a little bit busy, and mainly thanks to the pandemic. Things at my work have gotten a little bit overloaded. So, mixing my time up between working and building stuff for Godot, doing my normal work, my family life, obviously, and doing the tutorials. I've not had the time to catch up on a number of the tutorials that I want to do. When we look at what I'm doing right now here for my car, because also I'm trying to figure out why certain things don't work. These streams, I'm using them to investigate this, to build this stuff, and sort of get to a point where it works the way that I want them to work. And then hopefully, when things calm down a little bit, and I'll have the time that I need to properly do my tutorials, then yes, I'm planning to do a part 6 of the vehicle tutorial where we will cover all the logic that I've done here for the gears. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that in the same format that I've done the tutorial so far, where I'm actually building it during the tutorial, or whether we're going to look at the end product and I'm going to explain how everything works and do a code review. That's something that I still haven't really decided. When I look at the streams that I usually do on Friday for my space game, those I'm not planning to turn into tutorials. That is really a project that I'm just building. I want to return to that as soon as I can start doing these tutorials properly again, because I've also got a couple of tutorials planned around the object interaction. We actually covered most of that in an earlier stream, and I want to turn those into a proper tutorial as well. The other things, obviously, I did the stream a little while ago about the setting up the Oculus plugins for the Quest 2. For Quest 1 and Quest 2, with the new approach that was done. That's also one that I plan to do a condensed tutorial for. But right now, the way things are, I can't promise that I have the time to dedicate to that, to do the work to a level of quality that I like releasing. There are a few things in the pipeline that I can't talk about yet, that hopefully will come to fruition in the next couple of weeks. That will drastically change my ability to spend time on that stuff. So I am definitely planning to return back to my normal tutorials, and I'll have a balance between the streams that I do where we do the exploratory work, and then the tutorials where you have your 10-minute, 15-minute max tutorial covering the condensed version. But right now, definitely, I don't see that happening until mid-December, end of December at the earliest. Alrighty. So sorry about that, because I know that is what my channel is about, but unfortunately, there's a few things that I just don't control right now, and yeah, we just need to work through those, and then it's hopefully back to our usual schedule. And my head's falling off the camera. I'll move that bit up. There we go. And that is the side of my green screen. That's not going to work either. Okie doke. So the logic that we were working on last time was about selecting the gears, which we have working now, and then shifting between the different gear ratios. And the idea now being that depending on the speed of our vehicle, we calculate back through the gear ratios what the RPM of the engine is. And I have a feeling that we've got that pretty much covered the way that we should. And then using the RPM to look up the power in a power curve and feed that power back through the drivetrain to get a power at the wheels that will accelerate or, maintain the speed of the car. And obviously, the higher the gear ratio is, the less power actually makes it to the wheels because of the gear ratio, the way that works. The slower the acceleration is at higher gears. So that is one element that determines acceleration. The other element, obviously, is that the faster we're going on the road surface, the more drag we have, and there eventually is a balance between the ability of the car to bring power to the road and our drag, our slowdown effect. And that's where I got stuck last time, because for whatever reason, that power to slowdown ratio is way off. And I don't know if something changed in the physics engine that broke it, because I had that working in an earlier test version of this, or whether we're missing something in what we're doing here. Now, I don't want to start staring at my screen for the next 2 hours to try and figure it out. That's not my goal for tonight. I want to start dressing this up more and building more things, test areas maybe, or build up our test environment so that we can more easily figure out what is going on and how we can set up our car. Because that's something that I really miss as well, is there's a whole bunch of controls that affect how the car behaves that we can't directly see, the effects of if we change them. So we change something in the source code, we start the game up, and we don't really get that feedback to tell us, okay, is this the right setting? Is it doing the right thing? So there's some stuff that I want to build around that. But yeah, that does require a couple of things that we need to be able to tweak and figure out, okay, how are we going to manage that? Especially also because this code is starting to get a little filled up. We need to break that up properly. Now, when we look at our car, there's a couple of things that are important. First of all, our car itself. where we have all the control in information already over here, where we're controlling our engine force, brake force, all that sort of stuff. Here's our power curve that we set up, which probably, again, I think a torque curve makes more sense. That's definitely something that we need to figure out a little bit, or play around with a little bit more. But then we have our rigid body. Oh yeah, so this is our inputs for our motion. That's all controlled by our logic. We have our rigid body that is really controlling our vehicle body. And the important bits about that, obviously, it needs to be set as a rigid body. Every vehicle body is a rigid body. Is the mass of our vehicle and the weight of our vehicle. So yeah, because it's times gravity gives us our weight in kilograms. So our tiny little car only weighs 575 kilograms. Let's double check that. Wiki Caterham. These are. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. 575 kilograms. That is the weight. Where is it? I just saw it in the preview. Here we go. So again, I'm using real world metrics here. I don't think our simulation is accurate enough to really reflect what's happening in the real world. But, using this as a base for our car makes sense. So we'll leave that the way that it is. We don't do anything with the gravity scale. So that's all working. So the other thing that's really important is how we set up all of our wheels, because that is what drives our physics, engine. Now, the first thing that we have is this per wheel motion, which allows us to overrule what forces are applied to each wheel. We're going to leave those alone. That might be nice to look into at some point in time as part of the simulation, because we can do some funky things there to make the car do drifts and that sort of thing, as I understand it. The ones that are important for us right now is the user's traction. Only the rear wheels are driven, so those have traction, and obviously the front wheels are the ones that steer, and that's why that is set as steering. So if you don't do anything with these, make sure that whatever inputs we put on the vehicle body is applied to the different wheels depending on these two settings. So if we have traction on, our engine power is added to the wheels. If we have steering on, our steering is added to the wheels. And if I'm not mistaken, when we look at traction, it divides the power over the wheels that have traction enabled. So the power that we've set will be halved on each wheel. I don't know if there is options to balance those things and mimic limited slip differentials and that sort of thing. I'm guessing that for something like that, we need to use our per wheel motion to simulate that. Yeah, exactly. Weight in mass in kilograms. Weight is 60 kilograms. Yeah, that was what I was indeed wondering about. Yeah, mass times gravity. Yeah, so wasn't it the right way around? So our mass is 58 newtons times our acceleration of gravity, 9.8. So 58 newtons times 9.8 is 575 kilograms. So I think that's the right way around. I think, isn't it? I think so. Else that might explain some of the behavioral issues, because obviously a very light car would sprint away like crazy. So we'll see if we need to put that the other way around. The masses and weights and okay, so you're saying that is the other way around. Okay, yeah, actually that makes sense. Let's have a look at what the docs tell us. Maybe that's what we screwed up. It's very possible. That would explain why it wouldn't be going the right way. Why is there was a lot more here in the description. I actually probably want to have just a look at rigid body. That's probably where it is. Mass. There. Weight. Okay. Weight based on its mass. Okay. It would be nice if that really needs to improve. Yeah, exactly. Got the wrong way around, didn't I? Why did I close that so quickly? All right. Okay, that's interesting. It's supposed to recalculate that based on the gravity amount. There we go. All right. Let's see if that makes our simulation better. Now, at this point in time, that would mean that we don't have enough power to drive this car. So I am assuming that this is going to accelerate a lot slower. Yeah, there we go. Very slow. But that makes perfect sense because now we don't have enough power to power a car. So let's make our engine force 10 times as much as that it was. And let's see if we now have a car that's more easily controllable. Now, we did play around a lot with the other settings last time, which may be completely wrong now. Definitely way too... I just want to see if it can keep accelerating. Okay, it's not giving the sort of power that you would expect at these gears. We're hardly accelerating at all in the higher 3 gears, so we definitely haven't got the balance yet. Okay. But I think that is a good part of the equation here. Let's see. So 0 to 60 would be 3 seconds, and 0 to 100 would be 8.9 seconds. 0 to 120 will be 15 seconds. So we need to measure that one eventually as well. Okay. So with this power, let me double check. Is the gear ratios, are they still correct? Because we did have some issues with 201. Yeah, that all looks correct. So sometimes it doesn't copy those things properly. Doesn't show a reverse one here. That's right. Our final drive. Where was the final drive? 3.38. Yep. So that's all set correctly. Did we disable anything in code, or was that still working the way that we expect it to? So that's calculating the RPM back the way that we expect it to. That's very good. We're gonna change that in a bit. Do extra timings. Okay. So we get our engine RPM. We divide that. So our engine RPM was calculated correctly. Then we divide that by our maximum RPM to get a value between 0 and 1. I flatten out the front of that curve, which is fine. We then get our power, our max power from our curve. That's good. And here, if we're in reverse, we multiply it with our reverse gear. If we are in neutral, we don't have power at all. Else we do our maximum power times our gear ratio for the selected gear. But we don't have our final drive in here. Do I do our final drive later on? Total max power, max engine force. Now, obviously, we kind of have our final drive, because it's a constant. If we add it in, it's just a matter of then lowering our max engine force. I think that would be nicer on the whole. So the other thing that I really want to do here. Let's see. So we need to make that 10 times as much as our default. Braking force we need to change. That's fine. Actually, if we do our final gear, what is our final gear? 3.38. So if we're going to add that in, 1500 divided by 3.5. Okay, so let's make that 500. It's a little bit more power than we started with, but that's okay. And we're going to go and put our final drive calculation in there as well. So that should give us the same acceleration that we just had. Okay. All right, so we are... How can we still be accelerating when we're at the end of our power curve? That's pretty amazing. I think that's pretty hilarious. I think we're going to start adding a few more things into the visual side of this so that we can more easily debug it. Okay. Because obviously at our end of our power curve, we should be having no acceleration anymore, so. That's kind of how we create an automatic rev limiter. Maybe we haven't actually got that set up correctly. I don't know. So. Am I showing our RPM? Yeah, that was the one that was keep going up and up and up and up and up. Okay. That is interesting. Oh, we do have power all the way at the end of our curve. That's not good. All right, we have to make sure that right at the end, we're going to hit 0 because we don't want any power at the end here. Now, again, the question is, do we have a torque curve or do we have a what's the name? Or do we have an HP curve that we need to do here? I'm gonna assume that we're gonna keep the torque curve here. I need to have that still like that. So I probably want to have one more point here. I just want to create a steep end to our power curve here, just so that we bring that down to 0. Nice at the end. Now, once we get a little further along with this is going to be our trigger to hit our rev limiter. So again, in a game, the rev limiter isn't actually going to do much. It's just we hit the end of our power curve. We hit our max RPM. In a real car, that means it cuts the gas, falls back underneath the threshold, puts the gas back on, and you get this shifting of the RPM right at the end. In a game, we can simulate that going back and forward just fine, and have some fun with the sound. But we can just trigger it based on that we hit that max RPM. Something to think about. But we want to cut off the power all the way at the end to make sure that we hit our max RPM in our when we hit, we don't get any more acceleration once we hit the max RPM, basically. Okay. Let's see if that works now. So we should max out. Here we go. Now we're actually maxing out. And we kind of get a limiter here. We can see that it doesn't really stay stable. The thing is, though, that we can also see that our acceleration is 0.6 seconds to 60 and 0.9 seconds to 100. So we definitely have way too much power. Now, I want to see what happens when we go up the gears. So now we go to third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. Well, we're kind of hitting the end of our curve in every gear now. Sixth gear has got trouble reaching it. And I wanted to test that because with this power setting, we're already seeing that we have difficulty at the end of that curve. So the big question is our max power wrong? Or is our curve too optimistic? Well, I'm pretty sure that our max power is wrong because even though we changed it in our script, it didn't actually change over here. So we had 3 times as much power as we had originally. So let's see how we're now doing with this. Bouncy. All right, let's see if we can actually get there now. All right, and this is what I just don't get, which I find so strange, is note that we now have a 2-second 0 to 60 and a 3-second 0 to 100, which kind of makes sense if we don't have to change gears. But we'll see if we go and look at the specs that isn't realistic. So we can get it a little higher in second gear, get a little higher in third gear, and we can see that we're starting to crawl in fourth gear. And we I still have some power left in fifth gear, but this is not natural, right? These higher gears, this is the thing that I don't get, is that max power that we have here, that maximum engine force, doesn't provide us enough power at the higher speeds. Now, I don't know if that is because our friction calculations is wrong or whether that is because our engine force is wrong. Also, we might not be getting any road friction at all right now, or any, oh, excuse me, I just need to double check this. Oh. Okay. That is all good. There. Always answer texts from your wife. Good relationship advice. Okay, so right now I don't know if this is a matter of is our power curve to because remember, once we get to those higher RPMs, we're really playing in this section of the power curve. So yeah, we might actually want to play with that first and see. I know. Okay. No, that's a type of car. That's not really what we're looking for. Oh, dyno with a Y. That might help. There we go. I just want to see an example curve. So here we can see that torque curve, which I was trying to mimic right now. And here we can see our power curve, which falls off at the bottom. So let's see if we can actually get better results if we turn this into a more proper. power curve like this. Again, I always want this to start a little bit higher because else we don't really get anything that we want. And this stops much more abruptly, which is really interesting. So let's just see what that does. Just to see, are we getting something that makes more sense? It does help if I don't drop my thing. The other thing is that we need to double check whether 8,000 RPM is representable for this engine. That's the other thing that we haven't checked. Okay, our 0 to 60 kind of makes a lot more sense now. Right now, I just want to see if we can actually hit our max RPM in each gear. Close enough to see if we still have power to the wheels. So you can see that it's really struggling in 5th gear. And we can even see that we don't even have enough power to sustain 6th gear. It's really interesting. Now, one of the things that that could mean is that our max power needs to go up, but our curve needs to come in much more like this. That's one possibility. Again, you can see how steep that comes up here on a sheet like this. Which again, it's hard to say because it's flattened in our view. Hi, Rodzilla. Oh, better late than never. Welcome, and glad you could join again. So yeah, I do want to keep this here just so that we always have power at the bottom end because we're not simulating a clutch to get us going. But the question is that maybe our power curve should be steeper and we can put up our max power a little bit. But the other thing that I want to know is, do we have information on what the max RPM is of this car? Oh yeah, that's what we did. So the maximum power is hit at 7,500 RPM, and that's where it should come down. So we said that we had a maximum of 8,000 RPM, so it's around 0.9. It's a shame that the scale... Can we get the scale much more precise? Is there an option for that? No. Because that would probably be somewhere... So we hit our max power a little bit sooner. I think that we're going to make sure that this point, our max power point, is actually the thing. And after that, we just drop real quick. Boom. I think we should get another point in here where we're organizing that. We have only a little bit power in the low ranges, and then we have this peak at the end. Which also means that we can put this one a little bit higher. And this is what I find strange about this setup, because this means that with that power curve, with those gear settings, we can hit 100 in 1st gear. And that's why I don't get those numbers. Okay, so now, well, we're still hitting 100 in the final, but we're almost there, right? And that's a big question. Should we be able to hit 7,800 RPM, or should we lose power at that point in time? Just see if we can at least creep up all the way to the top. There we go. And 6th gear, we're still losing power. But we can also see that our 0 to 60 is crap, which is kind of interesting. Which makes me think that we are actually too far here. Okay. I actually want to capture this one. I'm thinking that instead of we're gonna keep these RPM 0. Excuse me. I'm gonna do that all there. Okay, so yeah, let's go and do that as well. Let's type these things. It definitely is a float. Okay, so here we need to be careful with the names. Float as well. Results. I'm renaming this because we now have a variable called RPM as a global or as a script variable. So obviously I don't want any naming confusion there. In theory it should work, but I kind of like that to be like this. We're going to improve that at some point in time as well. Let's do this. Floats. We'll make something different for this at some point in time. So do I want that factor in there, or do I not care about that? I do. Okay. That becomes the input of this. So the reason I'm doing this is that now we can start outputting some of these things over here without having to recalculate them all the time. That one I definitely do want as this. Okay. Just want to start with that just to see. No, I want to actually get the yeah, I want the max power as well. And I'll put this one as well. I'm not sure what we really want there. Let's see. And that means that we're going to do this. All right. So I need our minimum value was 0.1, so that's working properly. We now go and throttle away. You see our power slowly building up. All the way to there. Okay. So we're never going to exactly to We definitely are too far on our power curve. Okay, let's actually see if we can get our maximum power curve. That would be interesting. Now, a lot of this stuff I'm going to remove eventually because it's just for testing, and I'm sort of wondering if we shouldn't have something for that as a result. Yeah, the slowest part of coding is indeed variable naming. Absolutely. Well, again, I'm just reaching 0 to make sure that if we don't, then once we're at max RPM, we will keep accelerating. And because we are calculating that back, I'm purely bringing that back to 0 to simulate a rev limiter. That's all I'm doing there. So a real, and this is for real cars as well, right? That you're still making power past that max RPM point, which means that your car will keep accelerating. Your engine will keep going faster and faster until your engine blows up, right? If you exceed the max RPM of your engine, it doesn't stop producing power. It just gets to a point where it starts to move too fast and tolerances will be overloaded and you suddenly have a bearing go out or something else, and that's end of engine. So what they've done is they put a rev limiter in your car, which really, literally when you hit your rev limiter, what happens at that point in time is that it just cuts your fuel off, right? The moment you hit your rev limiter, your onboard ECU says no more fuel. And no more fuel means 0 power. And the moment that happens, you slow down until you're under, your ECU says, okay, I've slowed down enough. I'm going to put the gas back on, and you start accelerating. And you get this effect that you see on your air program that you just go, right? And that's all. Cut fuel, full back, fuel back on, full power, cut fuel, full power. And it's not good for your engine, but it does prevent it from blowing up. And that's just what I'm simulating here with bringing it back down to 0. A nicer way to do this, which we probably will put in there at some point in time, is that we simulate the max or the rev limiter for real, where we keep our power curve going. Our max RPM still has power, but the moment that we detect that we hit max RPM, we cut all the power in code, and we have a point where we reintroduce power either by a time delay or by saying, okay, hey, the RPM has now dropped, put the power back on. And that'll be, that's something that we'll solve once we start having sound in this thing. I mean, we can actually hear it. Right now, it's just to get to that point where we no longer have power at the end. But I want to find out what the top power is right now. Because we can't really see that from our graph, which is really annoying. Power, that's rev, it's 0. Lost. That's what I wanted. Okay. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to say, and it's actually at this point, that's already good. If max power is bigger than max power value, then we're going to say max power value is max power, and max power at rev is going to be RPM. And that will allow us to find our top. Max power. Just wasting space, but okay. don't want the end. All right. Let's see where. Okay, how does it know max power at RPM is 5993? That doesn't make any sense. Why would it do that? Is that because it's the falling? We have suddenly a blip of speed? I think we have a problem in this first one. Where's my last boss? Last boss, last boss, last boss. I'm not seeing it. Here we go. Ha! Okay, you know what? On ready for our last boss. What are we using for this? Let's make sure that we initialize that properly. I think that'll probably help. There we go. That helps. So we got a really high starting power just when our game started, because we're not on the center of the world. Hey, yes, it's Alex. How are you going? Why am I missing some of my chat? I don't know. I think I lost some of my chat somehow. Anyway, let's have a look at what this is doing. Okay, so it says that our max power was 2758. So we hit max power early. That's interesting. I was expecting it to be late. That's the thing. I don't know. It looks like it has a weird spike in here somehow. So it probably gets early because of that. Okay. Okay. Bring it back a little bit more. I really wish that we had a way to see what that value is, where this is actually positioned. That's the other thing. Why does it... Okay, hang on. Something's not right. I want to know why. You know what? I'm going to go and put a new line here. So we got that. RPM. I'll put max power value there. Okay, so somehow I already got a 0.72 there. How can I have a 0.172 at 0 RPM? Where would that be coming from? Because 0 RPM, we have max power bigger than power value. Power value 0. Okay. We initialize them all at 0 here. Ah, that's because we got a factor in there. Hold on. Am I? Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Factor. I'm not loading my factor there. Okay, that's fine. I get that. And then it goes over because that is our point where we go above that 0.1. That makes sense actually. All right. So we never hit full power, full 1, and we now hit it at 73. And the thing that I really find interesting is okay, I'll tell you guys what's bothering me. What is really bothering me is when we look at our specs here, we see that our 0 to 60 times is 3.1 seconds. But a 0 to 100, wait a freaking second. Seriously, am I that dumb? Am I really that stupid? Where's my... This is what you get for being European and not an American. Okay, so now it makes sense. Okay, sorry guys. The problem, of course, is that 60 miles per hour is roughly 100 kilometers per hour. So we're looking at the wrong numbers. Now it starts to make sense. Okay, so when we look at our 0 to 60 miles per hour, we actually need to have a look at 100. So I'm actually going to kill this. This one's going to be 100. Let's actually go. And the other one is... okay, so... That's 160 then, isn't it? Calculator? 6. Oh, I got 2 calculators. That's not what I wanted. 60 times 1.6. Oh, roughly 100 times 1.6, obviously 160. All right. So then we're going to change that. We're going to say this is going to be 100. 100. This is going to be 160. 160. So that's 100. And that's going to be 160. pH. Okay. So that's going to be 100, 160. Here we go. 100, 100, 100, 160, 60, 60, 160, 100. And again, I really want to make this into a component that we can do timing with, because it's a little bit crazy that we do it like this. Let's see what we get now. Because the thing is, the only way that you can get that jump in time is if there's a gear change in between. So the fact that we hit 100 kilometers per hour makes it really weird. So let's see what we get now for timing. So we're way too slow now. Boom. Oh, and we're getting hardly anything in our power band. Okay. But that is starting to look better. So, all right, I'm gonna do something really weird. I'm gonna make it like this because I want to see if what point this is. I want to have that point in the right place. So this is gonna screw up our timing completely, but that's fine. I just want to see where that point is. See if that makes sense. Boom. Okay. Well, 75:17. I'm quite happy with that because that means that that point here is pretty much where I want it to be. So we had a good gamble there. That was actually where you would expect this one to be. So obviously I don't want that to be as crazy as that. So we're just going to go and do this. Flatten that out a little bit like that. So we're going to have that bump over there. Now we're going to make sure that our power stays here a little longer. Building up to that, maybe not that long. I don't know. Do we want more? Yeah, maybe. All right. Let's see what that does. It would be nice if we had a dyno sheet of one of these cars. I am neither British nor American. I'm Dutch. Go figure. Living in Australia. Go figure double. Go double figure. All right. Now, weird thing is, again, in 6th gear, we don't have any power left to actually accelerate with. So I think our power curve is too steep now. Still think that's much more of a... I really just don't want it to make any sort of meaningful power up here. This is going to flatten out our whole power curve here. That's not what I want either. Let's go have a look. Where are we now? Oh, we now have no power going away now. Oops. I forgot to shift. That's totally off now because of my bad shifting. Okay, so... All right, it has some usable power left in 6th gear. So there's two things that are throwing things off right now. One is that we actually don't have a good launch from standing still, because in reality, when you pull away with a car, you rev the engine, especially in a sports car, you rev it a bit higher, and you put power on the road with your clutch, right? Just to get the car moving. And at that point, once it's moving, once you hit that, over 1,000 RPM comfortably, then you start making power and away you go. But we don't have that here. We are actually starting at 0 RPM. And I'm mimicking that ability by having a flat curve here so that we do have startup power to get the car rolling. But you can put far more power on the road pulling away by revving the engine and using your clutch. So there is a part of me that thinks, well, maybe I shouldn't be so conservative here and just accept that we're going to up this and actually put some meaningful power on the road, because on the higher gears, that's not going to be enough power to do something with. So this might be enough to get us through that startup hurdle. Now, again, also remember that we're already doing that 0.1, so we're actually starting over here. We're ignoring that earlier part, so even if we don't have any RPM, we do have that. So we're going to get a little bit more usable power in the bottom right now. Then we're going to go all the way to the top. And again, the thing that I don't like is that right now, once we hit that 6th gear, we don't have enough power left. Now let's see with this curve what happens to our total. Oh, wait. Let's start this over. There we go. And this time, let's try and shift at the right time. Okay. So here, there's two things that are really interesting. I just want to see what happens in 6th gear. So in 6th gear, still hardly have usable power. The first is that at 0 to 100 times of 3.33 seconds. That's in the ballpark. But I want to 0 to 60 time is still way too fast. Now, there is one thing that we're not accounting for here. So we're slightly slower. I'm willing to accept that. But we were about 2 seconds fast here. Now, the thing that we don't do, and that might explain this, we had to shift twice, I think, to get to 100. And we are shifting instantaneously. In a real car, you put down the clutch, you lose some speed, you change gears, you depress the clutch, and then you have power again. So there is a 1 second point where we're changing gears that we actually don't have power. And we're not simulating that right now. And that could be the reason why we're 2 seconds faster than we should be, because we're actually putting the right amount of power on the road. All right, so the top speed is 250 kilometers per hour. What was our top speed? What did we actually get as a top speed? That's going to be interesting to see. All right, let's see what top speed we were hitting. Because again, I want to try and figure out, okay, how close are we to a somewhat realistic behavior of a car. Still having the problems that we just don't have enough power in 6th gear. Yeah, so if we had power in 6th gear, we could hit that 250. And we're slightly slow on our 0 to 100. So I'm willing to up the power to 700. Let's see what happens now. And again, we should actually, that's probably a good one. You know what? I think that is really a good one. Okay. Where is my... I want to keep that together with all the gears. Okay, select the gear. Shift timer. Boom. Okay. So, what we're going to do here... That's just our timing. So this is our input. So we're going to say if our gear shift timer is 0, only then we're going to check this. Ooh, and what's that? Okay, that needs to be double assigned. So the other thing, and this is actually going to be a export variable. Gear shift time. Actually, in this case, that needs to be here. The export variables, we should do it like this. They want to do this as well, this as well, this as well. So let's say that for now we have a second to change gears. So that's our gear shift timer. It takes us a second to do that. Okay. Then whenever we change gear, we're going to say gear shift timer is gear shift time. So we're going to say, hey, we're changing gears here. And that means that over here, we are actually going to say if, oops, no, gear shift timer bigger is than 0. I'm just going to pause for now. Else. Okay. And that's all fine there. So if our gear shift timer is bigger than 0, we're going to do two things. First of all, max power is going to be 0. We're going to ignore everything else. We really don't care. I do want actually to have this one here. There you go. So we're going to keep the RPM of our engine there because I want to show where our thing is going. And we'll eventually, when we actually animate that on our dial, we'll make sure that there's a lerp there so that we don't have suddenly go to gear from boink. It actually falls back. It's fine. We're going to put the max power there, and we're going to say gear shift timer is gear shift timer minus delta. And obviously we don't want that to fall below 0. So we're going to slowly bring that time down. So now we have a second delay whenever we change gears before a car does anything. So let's see what that does for our timings. All right. Let's go. Yeah, I think I shifted a little bit too quick there. So our 0 to 100 is on the low side with this power. But I'm willing to live with that because, again, we don't have our launch control proper. Actually, with that, let's give this a little bit more power. And I actually want this to be slightly more conservative. Put a little bit more power, will come in a little bit more aggressively. There we go. I'm just trying to balance increasing the max power of the engine so that we have power at the top end, but not have that power available for too much of the curve because that would really make our car too fast. So let's do this again. All right, one thing that's really nice is we now actually have usable power in gear 6. Our timing is off, so we're not actually getting enough power right now. So both our 100 and our 160 is slightly too much. However, what I noticed was our RPM was going up, and then at the last bit, suddenly it jumped. We had a lot of power at the high end of our RPM range, which is kind of good. But then when I shifted, I actually fell far enough back that we didn't have power there. So I think in this case, our power band is too short. So I'm just going to move this back a bit and bring more power in. Again, I wish we had a way to change that scale so that we could see at what RPMs we're doing that. So we really need to have an editor that we can do that with. Because I think what we'll find is that our power comes in too late. And we might actually have a little bit too much max power now. I might bring it back to 700. We'll see. Okay, just want to see a 6 gear. We still have usable power in 6 gear. Perfect. Okay, so our 0 to 60 is cleaning close, maybe even a little bit too fast, and our 0 to 100 is too slow now. So again, our shifting time is definitely helped, but I also think that we actually have more power at the top end than we need, so that will bring that down. But I also still noticed that our power came in too late, so I'm moving that back even a little bit more, so that we have more power for longer. All right. And again, you know, it's as far as I'm aware, the translations should be on. I'll double check that for you. It does generally take a little while before YouTube updates the generated things. For most of my tutorials, I actually do my subtitles myself because I write my script for the voiceover anyway, so I might as well just put that under the video. But for the live streams, obviously the only thing that I can do is have YouTube do the translation for us. So I'll double check those settings. They should be on. I shifted too early there. And we can see that now because our 0 to 100 is definitely too low. But we still have usable power in 6 gear, which is really nice. And again, I think that right now we actually don't have any drag or friction. So that's the other thing that's really interesting. And might be a bit off. Oh, our top speed is a little bit too much as well. So that's something that that would definitely improve if do that. I'm tempted to drag this all the way out and drag this a bit more like this so that we have a much more usable power band. All right. Let's see what this does. All right, so 0 to 60 is way too fast, but a 0 to 100 is too slow. No. Just want to see if that second so these are automatic gearboxes, I think. But I think our shift times are a little bit too overdone. So I'm gonna actually bring this back a bit because our 0 to 60 was a bit too enthusiastic. I'll flatten it out a little bit. I do want to keep our max power to 700. But we're now going to go and lower this a little bit more. Okay, good. Power curve's good. Yeah. All right, and that's, I think, regardless of whether we're close or not, because again, we're never going to get this exact, right? First of all, we haven't even got the drag stuff working. So I would actually accept a 0 to 160 time. That's too fast. The 0 to 100 time drag isn't that important yet. So that would good. But the other ones, we're guesstimating figures here. So, hey Daniel, how you going? So let's have a look how well that goes. All right. So we're too fast on both right now. That's good. So let's pull that back a little bit more. And at this point, it would be really good if we could tweak those in game. But all right, that is pretty damn close to what we should have. I want to see if we still have power through all the gears. All right, and here we can actually go faster than the car should be able to go. We do have usable power in 6th gear, which we didn't have at the beginning, which is really good. At this point in time, we have no wind drag or anything like that. So yeah, I can imagine that we can get to powerful. Now, obviously, a Super 7 doesn't have a whole bunch of drag, but it should be noticeable at those speeds. And at that point in time, I think we'll even decrease some time as well once we start adding that in, and we might up the power a little bit. But I think as far as the simulation goes, I think we've got all the ingredients in place. We've got some gear shift time. Again, 0.3 based on here, where the lowest of this list is 290 milliseconds. That's still freaking fast, because I'm pretty sure that is a freaking expensive car with a really expensive gearbox in it. I'm pretty sure that these are also shift times that have a lot to do with. Oh, here we go. The average manual car driver is between half a second and a second. So I think our 0.3 is very, very aggressive. So I'm actually going to even default that to 0.5. But it does increase that time, right? That's, I think, something that we were really missing in this simulation. The other thing is we're now simulating us actually cutting power. Now, one of the things that's going to be really interesting that I need to think about how are we going to do that is once I have my pedal set up. So like I said, I wonder if I actually finished my sentence back in the beginning of the video. But I've ordered a proper steering wheel and pedal box because my daughter wants to get into sim racing. And obviously, I want to go and support that here. And that one has a clutch. So we can actually, if you don't have a clutch, and it's something that we're going to have to support, and people just use little flippers, or, they use they just use a controller, and they do gear changes, then we get our gear change time here. But obviously, if you have the pedals and you have your clutch pedal, we really need to implement that properly. Is that, put down the clutch, then you're allowed to do the gear shift. You can release the clutch. Obviously, it still won't be realistic because you don't get the feel of that, but we can simulate that more accurately and get even more accurate shift times. The other thing, of course, is in the way that we've implemented this now, the moment that you change gears, we cut the power just like in a real car. So we actually lose some RPM during that half a second of the gear change instead of us hitting the RPM right away. What we're missing here is that a real driver would use heel and toe, or if you're accelerating, would obviously keep their foot on the gas pedal to make sure that you come on the gas, or when you release the clutch, you come on with more power and have a smoother transaction going forward. Well, we just now fall back in power and just have a perfect gear change afterwards. Drunk driving in VR. Well, I guess that is safer than drink driving on the road. Don't do drinking and driving. That's all I can say. I remember the days when I used to do track days and there were idiots who would drink heavily the night before and then go onto the track. It's not a pretty thing. So yeah, I'm glad that in the couple of decades that I've been around, that the opinion of driving while drunk has changed quite radically. Because yeah, when I was a kid, it was supposedly macho to drive after you had a few drinks, and you know, if you killed someone, well, guess I didn't care about it. I don't know. Okay, I think with these changes, getting the proper weight of the car, playing around with the curve, and tweaking some of the numbers, I think we've got a accurate enough experience of our little car. Now, at this point in time, we're obviously driving on a big. How much time we got? Okay, 11:15. We still have an hour left. We're driving on this this big flat space, so there's definitely something more that I want to do with our test environment at some point in time. Not sure if I'm going to do that tonight. I think the one thing that I want to do first before we do anything else is actually I want to have some fun with our instrument cluster. Okay. And that's going to be a little bit more tricky. So, the body of our car is one big mesh. This guy. Ah, it's not part of that. Good that we checked that. Interior. It is part of the interior. Okay, good. So, I have not overruled the materials here. That makes it a lot easier. 4, 5. Okay, that's a dial. Oh, that's crap. You're kidding me, right? Dang it. That sucks. Okay. What I was hoping was that these all had their own material. And if they all had their own material, we could replace one of the dials with something else. But obviously, that's not the case. That is a bit of a shame. Now, no matter. There are other ways to do this. So, we're probably just going to go and overlay something. We're going to have an object that goes over this. Now, we're always going to be pretty close to it, so I'm not too worried about problems with the Z going wrong. Or should I? Oh, I don't. No. I'm gonna drop down. Each one. I just want to test something. No, not that. Okay, they're lying on top of those. That's pretty interesting. So they are already a little bit inset. Well, you know what? We actually have some space there. Okay. Clear. Okay. All right, so that's going to be our techo. Okay. I'm going to add a little spatial in here. Boom. Down. And I'm going to add a little mesh instance in there. Let's actually position this guy first. Where are you? Over here. Go up. There. Boom. It's going to be a pain to position in the right place, but that's okay. We'll get there eventually. right, let's get this one properly in there. It might be too far, but we'll see that once we have a shape there. I just want it roughly in the right spots. Cool. All right. Front view. That's a problem, is that we can't really. Then we get an order. It'll have to do. I want this to be as much in the middle as I can get it. Probably too far out. All right. So this guy is going to go and become a cylinder mesh, which is really big right now. Boink. Let's first go and rotate that guy. There we go. And now let's make this a. This is too small, but I'm doing that on purpose. All right. Cool. All right. So there we have our little cylinder shape. Sweet. So how big does that need to be? It's too much. 4. Getting close. 3. It's probably too small. It is. But also that shows that it's not positioned correctly. So let's move that down a bit. Yeah, I think that. Okay. So it's not flush. All right. This is tricky, guys, to get this right. All right. Let's enlarge it a little bit more so it kind of fits. It's getting pretty close to what I want it to be. 6. 6. There we go. There it's in, there it's out. So a bit more of this. A little back. That fits well enough, I think. Yeah, I think that'll do. All right. So. Okay. Here's spatial material. And we're going to go and load in our clock face, which should be not in scenes, in assets. Here we go. I don't know why we have a JPEG and a PNG, but I'm going to go for the PNG. There we go. And the problem that we now have is the way that the cylinder is broken up is that there's 1/4 of our texture for the front face, 1/4 for the back face, and half of it is used to texture the circle. If I remember correctly, if we scale everything up by 2, we get it in there. It's only upside down right now. I am fine with that for now, because we're actually going to do something different. We're not going to be using this. I just needed it to position it correctly, that I know that the clock face is working the way that it should. So what we're now going to do is we're going to save this branch as a scene. Where are we going to put it though? I really need to organize this better. For now, I am going to go and put it just in here. Call it dial so that we can reuse it for other purposes. Cool. And who knows, we might eventually have to do other things with that. Obviously, if we look at the other side, we can see that it's repeated. Interestingly, that's the right way around. But I don't really care, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to create a new viewport. Boom. How big is our image? Do we care? As long as it's square, right? Alright, so here's our viewport. Let's just say that we want that to be 512 by 512. There we go. We want this not to be HDR. We don't care about that. We do want to keep it linear. We're on the class 3 thing. We wanted that disabled. There we go. Might need to do that. We're always going to clear. We're always going to make it visible. Here we go. 3D with no effects. We're not going to apply any effects because we're just going to render a texture here. All right. So, right, is going to be, so this is going to become our background. Okay. And because we can't see this, because we're working with the viewport, I'm actually going to go dial face. Boom. I'm going to go and save that as a 2D scene so that we can actually open it up here and we can actually see what it is that we're doing. All right, so I made that a texture rect. That was a bit dumb. I did not want that to be a texture rect. That just needs to be a color rect. Color rect, boom, that's perfect. Which means that is automatically adjusted. That's cool. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do over here is we're going to go back into our material. And I'm actually going to make this a shader material because I don't want this to have any overhead. So we're just going to create a new shader. Let's make that a bit bigger so that we can actually see what we're doing. Shader type is a spatial shader. Render mode is going to be unshaded. There we go. Uniform. Picture. Thanks. That's a texture 2D. Oops. Is that correct? You write so many shaders and you always forget the syntax. It's all good. There we go. Sampler. Duh. You know what? Did I call this texture? No, because texture is my. I'm gonna call it. And of course, capital D. Okay. Void fragments. Let's write a fragment shader, and all we're gonna do here is albedo is texture face UV. Boom. End the story. That's all we need to do. RGB. Ta-da! All right. So now in our shader parameter, we're simply going to say that's going to be a viewport texture. Okay, so this thing needs to be local to scene. Very good. Now I should be able to create a viewport texture. And that's going to go to our viewport. Boom. Okay. So now whatever is rendered on our viewport will be shown there. Now we don't have anything there yet because we need to create something. And to be honest, that is a really good reason to have a different dial for RPM and for speed. I don't think we can use the same one for both, or we shouldn't use the same one for both. Okay. Alrighty. Images. Cool. I want something that I can zoom in on. This is probably more... That's the CSR. Yeah, cool. All right. There's our image. I can't zoom in on this image. That's so sad. Okay. Just Google. See if we can find a better one. Why does it always do that? No. Caterham CSR dash. Do we have something that's nicely zoomed in on the dash? I wonder if I'm ever going to get sued by Caterham. I hope not. Look at that. They got a digital dash here. How cool is that? Okay. Again, it's just mostly just to have some inspiration. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, that's small. Eesh. Okay, I like that other image. This image that we had before, I like that better. So, copy image. I'm just gonna open this in Krita so that I can properly zoom in on it. Again, it's just to get some ideas for the thing. New from clipboard. New. Great from clipboard. Great. That's fine. Don't care. Oh, that's pixelated. Anyway. The idea is fine. We've got a digital part to this dash. We got around here with our numbers. And we got some dashes. Okay. Fine. Let's go and have some fun with this. Center. Okay, that does not have coordinates. That's what I was looking for. Transform 256 by 256. That should put that nicely in the center. Center. Go. Then I'm on another colorette. I love my colorettes. Boom. All right. So this one needs to be black, like that. Cool. We're gonna make this. No, I think the width is good. We're gonna make it small. We're now gonna go and move it a bit up. And we're gonna move to the right. There we go. Cool. All right. We're going to 8,000 RPM. So we're gonna put these at every step of that. So we're gonna need 9 in total. So RPM 0. Now. All right. I think one of the things that I need is I need another no TD here. I'm actually going to put that here. I'm going to call this one RPM 0. This one I'm going to call block. Boom. Cool. Because that means that I can rotate this guy. Okay, it's rotating that way around. That's fine. Where do we want to start? That's too far. Maybe a little bit less. There we go. All right. So 140 degrees is going to be our starting point for 0 RPM. So where are we going to place our 8? Boom. So we're going to make this number 8. Actually, I'm going to call that 8,000 because that's going to be our max RPM. All right. So where do we want that one? It's not far enough. It's going to probably go all the way around. That's probably cool. So we're now going from 140 to 400 degrees. Okay. Calculator. 400. Take away 140. It's 260. Can we divide that by 8? 32.2. Let's see if I got that correct. So, boom. 1,000 RPM is going to be at 32.5 to this. So that is 72.5. Boom. Okay. $2,000 RPM. All right. At 33.5, yeah, it was. So it's gonna be 5, and then add 3,205. Boom. All right, 3,000 RPM. There we go. Again, add 32. So that's going to be 37.5. Boom. Cool. 4,000 RPM. Okay, transform. Again, 32.5. So that's at. That's 40, 70. Boom. That kind of makes sense. That's nicely dead in the middle because this is halfway. All right, 5,000 RPM. Not 500. 5,000 RPM. 302.5. Looking good so far. 6,000 RPM. That's going to be 535. There we go. And now 7,000 RPM. The last one. 67.5. There we go. Sweet. So we now have our markers in every point. We could obviously get all the in-between markers. Maybe at some point this should just be a background image, which probably would work better. But for now, we're just going to add our dial-in. Cool. So now one of the things that is actually really nice is what was I going to say? Is that it's actually pretty small inside of our car. So the big question is whether we can really see enough anyway. So I want to add 2 things here. One is a circle. Do we have a circle? No, we don't. Really? It's no 2D. We don't have a circle to draw? That would be sad. Well, then I'm not going to do a circle at this point in time. I'm just going to add another color rect to this, which is also going to be black. There we go. All right, so no, this one actually needs to be much bigger. I want this to smaller. Nicely like that. I want this to be more to the right. And that means that I can make this to 50. Let's start with that. Now, obviously, with these sort of things, what we really want to have is eventually nicely shaped images to make up our dial. Again, I think that instead of having these blocks, we could just have that as a full texture that we just use. Maybe even clean up the texture that we started with. But we do need our dial here to work with first. Now, we could pre-route this, but then we have to position it more properly. Which is going to be annoying, but we could just do that like this. Good enough. Because that now means that if this one is 0, then you know, we're at the start. And if this one is, what was our maximum rotation? 260, we're at full. And if this is 200, we're over there. So we can now just adjust the rotation of our dial to get our RPM setting. And I think for now we're going to reuse the same dials in 2 places. So that's all good. So let's go and add a little script to this for the dial face. I don't care about any of this. Let me just say func set dial angle, and we're just going to say center dial dot rotation is angle. That means we're going to get that in rads, not in degrees. Okay. That gives us the ability to move that. So now we need to go and add a script here. And that's also going to be called func set dial. Value. And in this case, we're going to say that's going to be between 0 and 1, 0 being at the start, 1 being full. So in this case, what we need to do is viewport dial face dot set dial. So this is going to be between 0 and 260. So that's just going to be value times 260.0, and then dag to rad to convert it to radians. Boom. All right. Now we have a way to update that. Cool. Now we're going to call this our RPM dial. Okay, so one more mistake here. We no longer have our scaling because we made our own shader. So, face, material, shader. We actually need to do this times 2. Okay, times half that. The other way around. I'm doing something wrong here. What am I doing wrong? Oh, then it should be times 2. Why would that not work? Because our image is correct. Might be upside down, but that's okay. Weird. Okay. It's moving apparently. Okay, what am I missing? Maybe it is half. Because it's this would only work if we have a tiling image. There we go. That's right. Clockwise. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so the problem that we're having is that because we're scaling up the UVs, we're basically having our texture 4 times. But that would only work if we're scaling it. And we were actually drawing the one somewhere in the corner. So I'm just moving that up. Which means that the backside of this thing is not working because we're, again, outside of our image. Now, I could turn tiling on, but with viewports, it's always a bit of a pain. So I could have put on the flags, repeat, but, you know, this works too. This is good enough for me. All right. Now, the Y is correct, but the X is not. So I'm actually going to do this to reverse it. Ka-ching. Perfect. All right. And that means in our car, we now have a dial. Ta-da! Now, these dials are nicely reflective. We've no longer made this reflective, which is kind of interesting. And that's because we made it unshaded. That maybe was not the thing that I should have done. It should be. Yeah, because actually this one, that reminds me, this one can actually be 2D with no effects. Because we're not doing any 3D stuff here, and that's where my mistake comes from, which also means that over here in our material, we actually don't want this to be unshaded. Instead, we probably want to start playing around with our settings here. And there's a little bit of shine to this because there's glass on top of it, so we can simulate that. But let's just do a little bit of metallic in here. Roughness. Also have that. Let's just see what that turns it into. Actually, I don't want it rough at all. That gives it way too much sheen. Oops. Interesting. There's no light shining on it, so it's staying a bit dark. Oh, let's just do it like this for now. And see if once there's some light on it, whether it comes back a bit. But I'm okay with it. For now, we have our dial. All right. So, well, that's actually our. No, we do want to do that as RPM divided by. So what we're going to do here, RPM dial dot set dial is simply going to be RPM between extension RPM. All right. Let's see if that works. Okay, let's go. All right. I haven't made that work. Okay. But we can see our dial moving all the way to the top. Now, unfortunately, our camera is too high to actually make good use of that, which I think means that I really want the camera to be lower. That's a really good one because... Okay, let me have a look at how that looks in VR. Oh, why? Oh, it's still loading our XR plugin, so I need to wait. I don't see anything yet. Waiting, it says. Why does it say waiting on there? Because it is working in here. I don't know. Let's try it again. Okay. That helps if I actually start it up. There we go. Oh, it is. All right, something's messing up with our thing for some reason. The thing that I find interesting is that we're sitting so high up that we don't actually see our dials. And I'm wondering if... we don't just have our player too high. So where is our player? How do I do that with this one? Well, how do we position our player again? It's interesting. Let's see. Player. Sitting over there. Yeah. So that might be too high. Interesting that we don't have that on the car itself. I just want to have a look at how I'm setting that up here. Did I just copy that from here? I think I did. Yeah, I did. So I actually want this to be a bit lower, so that we're looking through the center of this. And then we're going to copy that, and we're going to go and also put it like that here. There we go. Oops. Save and close. Run. I'm going to go back up desktop. I'm not quite sure why my thing was suddenly misbehaving, but that's okay. All right. Anyway, that's a little bit of a better position now. We still can't really see the whole of our dial, which is fine. It's funny how when we shift, you can see that our dial has a momentary drop, which is our shift time. So yeah. All right, so we have a working dial on the dash. We definitely have a way to slippery. All right. Spin. Okay. All right. I think as a principle to at least show how that works, that is probably a good start. No, I don't have Linux, so no, I have not tried on Linux. You know, the biggest problem that we have with Linux is that our good friends at Oculus don't support it. At least as far as the Rift is concerned, and I swap between the Rift and the Index. In theory, the Index obviously should be working on Linux, and OpenXR should be working properly there as well. But you know, because I need to work with all different sorts of headsets, yeah, I tend to stick to Windows. Alrighty. So we have that dial working. We'll just for fun use the same dial for our speed as well. So we'll just go and actually I want to move that up a bit. We're going to duplicate that one. And we're going to call this Speedo. And we're going to move that one to the side. And now we obviously need to position that one correctly because it's too far behind. I'm hoping that the orientation is roughly the same, but I don't think so. Interesting. That surprises me. I think the orientation like this is kind of okay. I need to bring it a bit forward. Maybe a little more up. There we go. So we have that one as well. All right. So with this one, what we're simply going to say is speedo, set dial. And again, this is where it would be nice that we just use a texture as the back face. But anyway, we're going to do speed and we're going to divide by, let's say 280 as the max speed for now. That needs to be set somewhere, but for now I just want to have that in there like that. All right. And as far as the OpenVR having signals for when a headset is taken off or put on, no, not at the moment. It does for all the controllers because it will remove and add trackers as a result, and you get signals for that. But for the headset at this point in time, it assumes that it's there. And I think that is definitely something that needs improvement. But it's, again, one of the things where we need to have some improvement in the core as well. So there we go. We see our speedo is working now as well. Didn't really center the steering wheel very well, but that's okay. So yeah. Alrighty. I think our brake isn't working at all because I have hardly any brake force. I think I've put my brake force to 5. It's absolutely nothing. Really slowing down very, 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 very slowly. Yeah. I think our default brake force we should probably... Now, weirdly enough, that one doesn't have to be that high. I'm not quite sure why that is. I think it's because it's a constant force. Let's see if that works a bit better for the braking. Yeah, that works way better. I like that. At some point, we should time the braking as well and make that... try and make that somewhat more realistic as far as timing is concerned. But that's, I think, for another day. All right. All in all, we have our RPM working predictably now, which is really cool. Our max power is pretty spot on at the moment, which I really like. So yeah. I think as far as that, yeah, that's fixed in place, isn't it? Sorry, I was just distracted for a second because I was thinking about whether I could move that. What? Move the steering wheel up a bit. Anyway, so yeah, I think we've got all the ingredients for the gear shift and power transfer pretty much working. So I need to clean up a little bit. I need to remove some of the debugging code from here. I do think that we need to make some of this better exposed to the outside world because, you know, in VR I really want to use the dash of the car because you might do something with the HUD or something like that, but it is really the dash of the car that you have visibility of. But when we're in desktop mode, obviously we want to repeat that somewhere, right? So while we have our dials here on our card, you can't really see those. This is definitely not precise enough to game on. So we probably would have like a second cluster over here that would be showing a copy of that same data. So we need to make that accessible somehow. We need to tie that into the interface somehow. And again, we need nicer dials anyway. So, but as far as where we right now, that we have the logic working, that we have the gear shift working, we've got our gear delay in there, which is really cool. The next step that we need to do here is actually have our car behave properly in the environment that it's in. All right, and that is partly as far as the car is concerned, which also means that I really want this car to be lower to the ground when we start, so that it doesn't feel like we're being dropped from a forklift. There we go. I need to put it a little bit down so that it settles itself. So look. Yeah, Oculus, obviously when they started with the DK1, they did both Linux and macOS. And at some point they decided that they only wanted to support the top end. And the problem that they had, on Mac, the GPUs were falling behind a little bit at the time. I think Mac is sort of crawled back, but and on Linux, the driver support was so. Especially NVIDIA was not giving Linux love for a long time. They are now, as far as I'm aware, but they weren't in the beginning. So yeah, it's only Valve that was really embraced Linux and also embraced macOS for some time, and it's really weird that that's kind of fallen by the wayside. Which I find really interesting. Why that kind of it's kind of explainable, I guess, because the macOS market share is non-existent. So while on Linux, one of the things that's really interesting to know is that a lot of the VR developers that, as far as I've heard, both at Valve and at Oculus, are actually working on Linux machines. Because of course for the Quest it doesn't matter, right? Oculus Quest, there's a lot of people who are writing the software on the Linux machine because you just push it out to the Quest and it runs on the Quest, and the Android ecosystem on Linux is, as far as build tools is concerned, is fine. So it doesn't matter. I was even talking to someone the other day who is building their Quest stuff on a Mac. So because it doesn't matter which machine you're coding on, you're always pushing it to the same device. So yeah, it's kind of funny that that Oculus still doesn't have a presence on Linux. I kind of get it as well, because Oculus has kind of made the choice at some point in time that they really want to be the consumer VR product. And the consumers aren't on Linux. The techies, the hobbyists, the people like us, we're Linux fanboys. I wouldn't say fanboys, because that's more the the people on the Macintosh side. But yeah, there's a lot of developers who really like to, they really like to be on Linux because of the freedom that they have and the tool sets that they have and the performance. Let's not forget how much more performant Linux is than Windows. But when you look at the consumer market, 99% of the people who would want to have a consumer VR device would probably go for the Quest anyway, because they don't even want to deal with computers. But if they do want to have PC VR, they're gonna have a Windows machine. That's where the market is. That's where, that's your market share. So I get it. Oculus wants, they know that if they want to make the best bang for buck, they target that market. And unfortunately, that means that the Linux market kind of falls by the wayside. While Valve, for years and years and years, has been very active into Linux gaming. So it only makes sense that they extend their platform to Linux. Plus that, they're in the ideal situation that they have all the tool sets available anyway. Everything is already cross-platform between Windows and Linux. So make VR cross-platform as well. I don't think it matters that much. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, Clinton, you're absolutely right. Oculus wants to be, the next Apple, and let's be honest, Apple is successful for the exact same reasons. You can joke about the fact that, yeah, and I had it this morning because I got a new iPhone 12 for my work. And my first reaction was, where's my charger? Because they switched over to USB-C. I was at my office. I didn't have any USB-C chargers lying around because my iPhone 7 had a normal USB-A charger. So yeah, I went like, what? And then yeah, you think the next step. Yeah, the reason why is because they can now sell a $30 charger, which cost them $5 to make, and they make some extra profit out of it. And you can, yeah, but that's not really where they're making the money. That's the thing that people forget is, yeah, the phones are expensive, which is interesting that Oculus is not choosing to make their hardware the most expensive. They are, in that way, they're not comparable to Apple. They're more comparable to the Sonys and the Nintendos of the world. Who again, they make their consoles, and they know that they're not making their money selling the consoles. They're making their money selling games for their consoles, or taking their cut from the games that are being sold for their consoles. Now, Apple's figured that out as well, where the bulk of the money being made is being made, taking their 30% cut from every application sold on the iStore. Which is, again, why I find it interesting that they premium price their phones. Because, the lion's share of their billions of dollars that they make every year is from selling apps, not from selling phones. The phones is enables them to sell apps. And that's the same mold that Oculus is following. They want to have a consumer-grade VR standalone headset that will sell well, so that they can take their cut from all the games that are sold on all these headsets. And I can't fault them there. I can't blame them for that. I don't think it's wrong. I think it makes perfect business sense, and and it means that there's a headset in the market that is affordable, that we can build software for, that we can build games for, and we can get a piece of that pie as game developers. And if that is what it takes to make VR go mainstream, then then that's what it takes. And not to go on a tangent too much. That's also for me the interesting. It's the interesting contrast between Facebook and Oculus. They are the same company that are owned by Facebook. Facebook makes their money through the social media that they have. They basically make their money by giving you something for free, the social media platform. And then the data that they mine and the access that they have to you, selling that to advertisers and people like that. So they're not making money off me as a Facebook user. They're making money off of third parties that are interested in me as, a potential client, when you look at advertising. And that gives you, this bad feeling that so many people have of feeling used for being there. Well, Oculus makes their money the quote-unquote old-fashioned way. They sell hardware, and they make money. Well, they probably don't really make money on the headsets themselves. I don't think those things are. I don't know if they're sold under cost, but I don't think there's a big margin on the headsets. They're making their money through the fact that people sell games for these headsets, and they're taking their 30%. And I don't mind that. That's a normal consumer business relationship. I buy a product. I'm fully aware that I'm handing my money over to someone for a product that they then provide to me. And that Oculus gets a cut from that because they make the ecosystem possible. You can argue about whether 30% or 20% or 10% or whatever percentage is fair, but the business model itself is fair. And I think that is where there is this weird balancing game between Facebook being used to making their money in very different ways, while Oculus is more traditional. And I think also that's where for us as consumers, in the end, that will work in our favor. Right now, the problem that we have with Oculus is that they are the only ones who have a consumer-grade VR headset on the market. Everyone else, Valve, I love this thing. This is the greatest headset that I own. I love the Index, absolutely, hands down. But it's not a consumer product. It's way too expensive. You need way too expensive hardware. It is a VR enthusiast's headset. So Oculus, there is no competitor in the market at the price point that Oculus sells their headset at. And the downside of that is that when they do things, or when Facebook makes them do things that that we as consumers don't like, we have the choice between abandoning VR or accepting and taking it. The moment that you have a competitor in that same space, that threat of the consumer saying, I don't want to stick with the Oculus ecosystem because I don't like Facebook or what Facebook is doing to Oculus, I might go to a other party. That's the moment where Oculus regains control and has the ability to say to their parent company, Facebook, we want to sell this headset and we want to have consumers, that love us for what we're doing. And you're suddenly endangering that. This whole thing, for instance, the Facebook account and stuff like that. And again, I think it's overblown in the long run. I don't think actually Facebook is doing, the fact that my Quest is linked to my Facebook account, I don't think that has any direct impact on me. But I can see that there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of things that I didn't think through. I talked enough about that one. Let's catch up on chat, shall we? As far as the AR/VR, I think that the problem will be on the OpenVR plugin side. And the problem probably is because at the moment that the headset is gone, there's no more tracking information. So I'm guessing that it's probably sending bad tracking information there. It's interesting. I've personally not experienced it for some reason, and that might just be because I'm always actively developing, so I don't turn my headset off. But the times that I've tried to test and make some, there's other people who have reported some problems with things being turned off and turned back on, and things getting a bit confused at that point in time. I need to look into it further, and I hope to have time for that soon, because I want that to work properly, obviously, because it's going to happen. In reality, someone's playing your game, gets called away, they'll pause it, they'll walk off. By the time they come back, the headset's gone into sleep mode, it's disabled itself, and if the game fails at that point in time, that's not a nice experience. So yeah, definitely something that I do want to look into. So, yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the Windows and Linux thing, I think the biggest problem that we're going to always have, is, well, I won't say always, because maybe at some point someone will release a Linux distro that is so user-friendly that it's going to conquer that consumer market. Because that's really what it's all about. And that's something that people like us, when we're developers, we often forget. That what we appreciate of an operating system, the openness, the ability to do whatever we want, the ability to customize it to our needs, those are in exact opposition of what your general consumer wants. That's one of the reasons why Apple is so strong within the consumer market compared to Android. Is purely the fact that it's Apple's way or the highway. We hate that as techies. We hate that. We want to be able to do with our phone what we want to do with our phone. We be paid good money for this thing. We want to do whatever we want with it, and we're smart enough to do the right thing. Consumers, and I'm overgeneralizing here, obviously. They're not like that. They just want stuff to work. So if there's one way that works and they know that way, then they are happy and they feel protected and they feel that they can't screw up. And while there's plenty of abilities to screw up in Windows does protect, or I wouldn't say protect, but it does guide users a lot better than Linux does. Linux, you have to know what you're doing. And again, for us techies, that's brilliant. We want that, because that means that we can choose the way that we want to do something. Because we're smart. We've learned this stuff and we know this. And I think that's something that will always be in the way for mass adoption of Linux in a environment that you have, people who work for a business or people who use it for, their home office environment or whatever. Those are people that don't want that stuff. They don't want that choice. They don't want to have that freedom. And Windows caters to them. That's just the reality. And that's also why I think the console market is so much bigger than the PC gaming market, is because you walk into your local game store, you buy the console, you hook it up to your TV, you turn it on, and you start playing games. And that's all it does, and that's all it can do. And you do not have to know how it works. You put the disc in and you play your game. While on the PC, you need to know how to install stuff. You need to know how to manage things, and you need to make sure you don't accidentally delete a folder that you shouldn't be deleting, and all that sort of stuff, or move it around, or rename something. So yeah, I think that is the real problem. That is, and I fully agree with you as far as when you look at what Valve's doing, when you look at what Godot is doing, making it as effortless as possible to release something on multiple platforms. At that point in time, if the investment to release your game, not just on Windows, but also on Linux, is near zero, yeah, game publishers are going to also put your game on the Steam store on Linux. And it might be 2 or 3% of their sales, but if there's no cost to them, then that's 2-3% more sales. But if there's a cost to it, if there's a maintenance cost, if there's a cost to making something work, because it works fine on Windows, but then there's a compatibility problem that makes it not work on Linux, a business is very quickly going to decide, we're not going to take that risk, because the cost of supporting it is much higher than what we stand to make. Yeah, SoundsBeard, 100%. That is one of the parts where the market has gone in the wrong direction, and I get why they're doing it. And I get it opens up a whole bunch of doors, especially when you look at games that are online anyway, or that provide online content. But yeah, I hate it. Absolutely agree. I get that the game might need to copy itself from a disk to your hard drive, because the disks are 100 times slower than your SSD drive, especially when you look at the PlayStation 5. Obviously, the internal drive is blazingly fast in comparison to the disk drive. So I can understand that they want to copy the contents of the game onto the hard drive, to combat load times and that sort of stuff. Although I personally believe that if you do that sort of thing, you should be able to put the CD in and you start playing the game, and that there's longer load times until everything's copied locally, then so be it. But But yeah, when you look at the fact that there's so many games right now that there's games being sold right now where if you look at the CD, there's nothing on the CD. The CD has a little loader, and the only thing that it does is download the game. You sort of go like, yeah, well, why bother? So yeah, I hate it, and I luckily nowadays I've got fast internet, but before I had fast internet, I would buy a new game, put it into my console, and then I couldn't play it for 2 days because it'll be downloading for 2 days. And now I have fast internet by Australian standards, not by world standards. But it's fast enough, if I now buy a game, then okay, I need to wait 15 minutes to download a 10 gigabyte patch or something, and it still sucks, but I'll get over it. But yeah, I do agree. It kind of takes away a core part of what is good about consoles. The fact that it's plug and play and you just go for it. Now it's plug and play and wait half an hour, or an hour, or however fast your internet is. And yeah, absolutely agree on the index. Like I said, from all the headsets that I've personally tried, and that's by no means all of them. I've not tried the HP Reverb that I've heard is really, really good. I haven't tried the Pimax, which I've heard both good and bad things about. From all the headsets that I've had so far, the index I'm the most impressed with. But is the when you look at the index being 2 to 3 times as expensive as a Rift S, or at least here in Australia, is it 2 to 3 times better than a Rift S? No, it's not. It's better. I think I've said it before. The biggest surprise was these things. I thought that these things were going to be horrible. They're big, bulky. They must be, compare that to this. I know why. I know why they put the ring on the top, because that was for the inside-out tracking. I actually prefer the original touches, the original CV1 touch with the camera. They, with the ring is on the bottom. They are the most comfortable ones of those. I get that they couldn't keep them that way. I get that they had to move the ring on the top, but it's made them top heavy, and I like the old design better. But I was expecting these to be horrible, and ever since I love these. These are amazing. I love the strap thing, that it's on my hand. It doesn't fall. Oh, I have to tighten the strap. It doesn't fall off on my hand. If I keep my hand open, I don't have to worry. With those things, I'm constantly worried that I'm going to drop them on the floor. Don't have this. They're comfy. They feel good. I really like these. And the headset itself, it's same thing. I'm always skeptical about ski mask designed headsets. So the headsets that are pushed against your face. And that is actually one of my beasts with the Quest. I like the Rift S in that respect very much better with the Halo design. With the Index, I find it surprisingly comfortable. I have, except for the fact that my glasses are too wide and they get stuck in the headset. That's really, I need glasses that are slightly less wide, and I wouldn't have any problems with my glasses. So yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about the Index, except for the fact that it's very, very costly. So yeah, thanks Valve for sending me one. I got mine from Valve. It was yeah, very happy with those guys. And I'm not saying that I love that one because I got it for free, because I got the Rift S for free as well from Oculus, which is, again, also thank you Oculus. I generally like that headset best. Absolutely. I'm not sure. Well, I do think that the player base at some point is going to shift to PC, or at least that the player base on PC is going to keep growing. I think when you look at standalone headsets like the Quest, the biggest problem is, even with the Quest 2's improvements, that they are still the performance is still not where it needs to be for the best VR experience. Very far from. But for the consumer, I like your comparison. The Quest 2 is the NES, or is the Nintendo of the VR world. Nintendo, same thing. The Nintendo consoles, whether it's the original NES or whether it is, the Wii is probably the best example. But even when you look now at the new Switch, it's always been the lower performing console within the generation that it belongs in. PlayStation and Xbox have far outclassed Nintendo's offering in every generation as far as performance is concerned. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Because the games, the way that Nintendo designs the games, sells the platform, they are infinitely playable games. Don't know what makes... I don't get why Nintendo has that appeal, why they have those people developing these games at that, with that, with this type of design that they have, and why that is lacking on the other. As much as I love Astrobot on the PlayStation, and as close as it comes to being an incredible platformer, both the VR version and the non-VR version, it just doesn't come close to what Nintendo offers. It's really weird why they can't grasp that same magic. I don't know what makes that special. Now with Oculus, it's a little bit more difficult because I believe that Oculus's brand of VR, mobile VR, fits in that same category. Because my experience so far with VR games, as beautiful as Half-Life Alyx is, or some of the high-end VR games that really look really good. Or you look Robo Recall, the original Robo Recall on the Rift. Beautiful game. You don't need that. You don't need that for a great VR game. And Robo Recall is probably the best example for that. Robo Recall on the Quest 1 looks but ugly when you compare the screenshot sides by sides to the Rift version. And you might notice that the moment that you put the headset on and you play the game for the first time, you might notice it, especially if you've just played the full version on a normal Rift. You forget it in 5 seconds because the gameplay is the same. It doesn't matter. The immersion and the gameplay elements that VR has to offer. If you design your games right, you can make brilliant experiences on limited hardware like the Quest. And especially now the Quest 2, in my eyes, has reached a threshold where while the performance is limited, it is not limited to an extent that you can't create the experiences that you would want to create. Will it look beautiful? No, it'll look a little bit less beautiful. But then again, you look at so many great VR games. They have a simpler graphic style. And that's fine because the gameplay makes up for it. And, the only thing that really is lacking in that ecosystem is that magic ingredient that Nintendo has. The moment that a couple of VR game developers come around who suddenly figure out what that magic concept is, that platform selling concept is, and build that game, that's when that consumer grade VR is going to take off. The PC side of it, same as with the consoles, right? PC has always outclassed everything else because of its infinite upgradability. When the PlayStation 4 came out, only the richest people had PCs that matched that performance, even though the PlayStation 4, performance-wise, was under par for what was in the market. But when you look at what the average PC owner has, it blew those specs out of the water. Nowadays, 7, 8 years later, how long has the PlayStation 4 been on the market? I have no idea. It's laughable what the PlayStation's performance specs are compared to, a 3080 RTX card or something like that. But it doesn't matter because it was fast enough for the games that were created for it. And that's it, right? That's in the end, that's what's important for a game developer and for someone who wants to play games is the hardware capable of running the experience that you want to create, the game that you want to create, and if so, if your public likes the game, it's going to sell. So yeah, I think the PC side, just like in the console market, the serious gamers choose PC because they want to be on the latest hardware and they want to get the maximum performance out of it, and that will be the same for VR. I'm the same too. 90% of what I do on PC. Why? Because I want to use the performance of my PC. I don't want to try and get the last little itty bit of performance out of a mobile. I'll get there at some point. That is the end goal for me. I do want at some point to have a game that I can release on something like the Quest because I know that's where the market will be. I just like the fact that the console market is still bigger than the PC market, even though the PC has got the greatest, options. Yeah, the old download days. Oh yeah, I remember downloading my very first games on the 300 baht modem. That was expensive for my parents. Um, yeah, Gentros. I don't know if you've got to say. You mean that you're also wear glasses? My nose is fine. It's when I wear my glasses. Yeah, this gets really pushed into yourself. And hey, if someone's watching who works for one of those lens companies, you sponsor me. I want some lenses for my for my index. Um, Absolutely, that would solve that. And like I said, I'm probably at some point going to either buy some lenses for myself, or I'm going to buy a smaller set of glasses to wear when I'm working with the headset. Yeah, I have a hate-love relationship with the PSVR. It's the first VR headset that I bought. If I'm not counting the little Google Cardboard ripoff that I bought before I had the PSVR. That doesn't count in my eyes. The PSVR was the very first VR headset that I bought, and the biggest problem that Sony had, logically, because they were so early, um, there weren't any games. So what they had was really good, but it was there were very few full games available at that point in time. Most were just small experiences. So after owning it for 2 or 3 months, basically what was worth playing had dried up. So I love the PlayStation VR, especially when you think back on when it came out. Okay, so it had a lower resolution than the Rift, but again, the same thing applies of what I was talking about with the Quest. It doesn't matter. If you have the right experience, it doesn't matter. If someone builds the right game and they cater for the fact that that resolution is low and the tracking is crap, if they take that into the design of the game, you can have amazing experiences. One of the biggest ones that surprised the heck out of me was what's the one called with the tanks? The one that was based on the old 1980s vector graphics tank game, and they made a modern VR version of that. Battle Tank or something like that. I can't remember what it was. I think I got that game with the PlayStation VR when I bought the PlayStation VR, and I didn't actually want that game because I had seen some videos and screenshots of it. And I'm like, okay, so they made a retro version of the tank game. Why would I want to play that? I played that in the 80s. I played that for hours. I loved it. The moment that I put the headset on and played that game, absolutely loved it. The other one, if you have a PSVR and you haven't tried it out, that I recommend any PSVR owner to try out, is Robinson. Robinson was this game that came out that is very flawed. And the feeling I have, and I don't know if this is true or not, because I haven't read any interviews with these guys or anything like that. But the feeling that I always had was that this was a launch title for the PSVR, and they got halfway through creating the game, and they realized they couldn't do the other half, and they just cut it short. But what they build, oh my god, the fact that this is running on a PSVR, it's stunning. It is one of the most gorgeous early on VR games that I've played. Just walking around, they chose the right things. You're walking around freaking dinosaurs. It's a sci-fi game in the far future, and you're walking around, on this planet that you're stranded, that there's these dinosaurs. And in the beginning, it's all cute and puzzly, and, you're playing this young kid, and you got this pet T-Rex, and then suddenly halfway through, it turns into a pretty freaking scary game where you've got velociraptors chasing you around. But it's so beautiful. And when you think that's running on the PSVR on a PlayStation 4, yeah, my hat's off to these guys. It's just such a gorgeous game. So yeah, my problem, again, to come back at it, the PSVR had a couple of really strong games to begin with, had a couple of really, really strong experiences, and then nothing. And then the only other notable game that came out in the beginning was the one with the gun, which I have, the peripheral. I love the gun. There's only one game that is fun with it, which is Farpoint, Flashpoint, something like that. And a game that it's good. It's not great, but the experience is amazing. That was actually the first game that proved to me that an FPS game is possible in VR. And I still believe to this day, if anybody at Guerrilla is listening, I know that I've told this to a few people who work there. Grab Killzone 2 and port it to VR. I think you would have a platform seller in your hands. Don't change anything to the game. Just turn it into a VR shooter. Learn from the Farpoint game, from what they did to combat the fact that you have this horrible tracking system. I think the same game mechanics that they applied there would fit very well in Killzone 2. Not 3 or 4. Oops, I knocked my microphone there. Not 3 or 4, because I think that those games went to a point where you have a certain amount of freedom of movement that does not rhyme with the tracking system. But Killzone 2, that would be amazing to play on a PlayStation VR. After that, it kind of dried up. And the weird thing that I had was that I kind of put my PlayStation VR away, and I started doing all this stuff with Godot and really got into it. And then I always had this opinion that the PlayStation VR wasn't a success because there weren't any games. And that was true at the beginning. And then at some point, I decided to look at the store, and there is so much there now. And there's a lot of crap on there. There's also a lot of really cool gems. And when you consider that it's running on a PlayStation 4, a 7-year-old PlayStation 4, or however old the PlayStation 4 is by now, and you're realizing that the tracking sucks, and you're realizing that the resolution is the lowest of all, it is the most comfortable headset there is to date. That's one thing that Sony got right with the PSVR is it is an incredibly comfortable headset to wear. Just the halo design and the snap of the thing that you can move it forward and it's still unrivaled in my opinion. I get why, because it has more problems with light leak because it doesn't close on your face properly. So I get that is why it's not being copied as much as it probably should have. But yeah, I think that the PlayStation VR has an unjust reputation. It is outdated by today's VR standards, but for what it was 3 years ago and what is available in the store right now as far as games, Um, my hat's off to Sony. I think they did the right thing there. I think they were too early in the market to really capitalize on it. But yeah, don't underestimate the PSVR. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's yeah. Like I said, Glenn, it's not just about if it's good enough. It's the experiences that you can have with it. You know, if the games are good, if they're well designed, and they keep the limitations of the hardware in mind, and they don't try to overstress that, because that's the thing that always goes wrong, right? That's the Achilles heel of VR at this point in time. You know, even PC VR, you get the best PC that you have right now, right? Biggest hardware possible, biggest headset. You can photorealistically render in stereoscopic. Okay, cool. Let's make the dream come true and make Ready Player One as a game. You're missing a really important ingredient, and that is that, as great as it sounds on the book, it's not a good game with the limitations of VR today. Why? Because I can't walk around in the world. You know, I have a 2 meter by 2 meter space here. It's what I think is so crazy about, everybody wants to play Fallout and Skyrim and uh, Far Cry in VR. Well, you imagine playing Far Cry in VR and you're running after a baddie with your gun. You take 2 steps and you run into a wall. Those games aren't fun. Yeah, okay, so you're not running then. You're now suddenly using your controllers to move and the whole immersion pops away. So the type of games that people have always envisioned, this would be great to play in VR. They're actually not great to play in VR. Some well-designed, Alex, Half-Life Alex, I think, did a really good job to find a good balance there. Keep going back to that because it's the best example that's in my head. There's many other games that do it really well as well. But again, it's designing with the limitations of the platform in mind. If you do that good, it doesn't matter whether it's running on the best hardware possible and it's looking photorealistic, or whether you go to the other end of the spectrum and you run on 7-year-old hardware and you make everything flat shaded and you have a Job Simulator, one of the best selling VR games currently. Doesn't matter. People get hung up on how realistic stuff has to look. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you make a game that's fun to play, and then it doesn't matter what it looks like. And the most fun games that are on in VR don't look it. They just are fun because the people who built them figured out what a fun element of playing in VR is. And that's a shame because so many games. I think there's so many people who are being turned off of VR because they look at the screen. They look at the screenshot of Job Simulator and they go like, "Why the hell is that fun? It's all flat shading and blocky, and why would I play that? That looks like a game my kid could make." Well, from that photo, maybe, yeah. Until you play it and you figure out what that game can do and what the interaction is about, and that you can do things that is impossible to replicate outside of VR. And suddenly you've got something where when you get these people to actually try these games, they suddenly go like, "Oh, I get it now." Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Hand motion, doing stuff with that. Again, the problem that I have, and I haven't played H3 VR. I've heard about it, but I haven't played it. Um, if I recall if I recall correctly which game that is, um, it is a very natural way of moving, but it doesn't fit the game. But what was that game that they're doing the skiing? There's this VR game where you actually you're on this. It's like this racing game, or running racing game, where you're sprinting against others, but it's like you're skiing, and they've got this arm movement where you're pulling yourself. And again, there suddenly they use this locomotion mechanism that works incredibly well in VR, feels incredibly good, and they've molded a game around that actually makes sense for that movement. Um, Because I think that's where VR fails, is when you have a great mechanic, but you then apply it to something that's unnatural, that doesn't fit, that breaks the immersion. That's, I think, the biggest problem. Uh, I haven't tried any of the run versions of the, like the Cat VR or the Omni. What's this thing called? Can't remember what that one's called. But I've heard mediocre things about it. When you look at the treadmills, there are only a handful of really good treadmills out there that are still in their research phases. And I saw this really interesting interview with the guy that made the really big treadmill that was used in the opening scenes of Ready Player One, where Wade is running inside of his van. Totally not in the book, by the way. He I don't think he ever had a treadmill until he he moved into his little apartment. The biggest problem that you have is you standing still. So while it makes it possible for you to run, first of all, your body has a problem accepting what you're doing because, again, what you're doing in the real world does not match with what you're doing in the virtual world. But the other thing is, it's very hard to keep your balance. And you think about it, right? You think about you're running on this treadmill. You're standing in place. So the Cat VR and things like that, they work by actually restraining you. Because if you suddenly stop running, well, with those things, actually, you've got this non-friction thing that you're walking on. So that's you already have to adjust the way that you walk. But on a real treadmill, where the treadmill's actually, I don't know if you ever run on a treadmill at the gym. I haven't for a while, but I used to. You change speed, you slow down, that thing doesn't react. You either fall off the back or you run into the front of it. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get that right and to get that into a position where you can really move freely and it feels natural. Now, that all said, it's an adaptability thing as well, right? It's the same thing as, I love playing racing games in VR. I love it. I think it's great. And my daughter too, by the way. My daughter is crazy about Drive Club VR on the PlayStation. It's one of the reasons why I want to buy her the steering wheel. And it's great. It's a great experience until you crash and you suddenly stop and then you get sick. That's where I get sick. However, that's me, right? I'm okay with it. I also know other people who are so used to how a car feels or their body is. And it's interesting because I used to drive on track as well. So it's interesting how I don't have that problem and they do. But they have the problem that, you're sitting still in a chair, you got your headset on, and you're driving around the track, and their body is going, I'm supposed to feel G-forces here. Why am I not feeling any G-forces? And while that's fine when you're playing on a big screen and your body accepts it, in VR, your body suddenly goes like, hey, you're fooling my senses with my eyes, but you're not fooling my senses with my brains. There's a disconnect here. I'm not liking this. And it's the same thing with treadmills as well. When you look at things like Cat VR, I've never tried one. There's a good chance that if I try one, I'm going to love it because I generally don't get that disconnect issue where if my body tends to accept that more easily. But a lot of people will have that problem. They'll have that problem like, hey, I'm not walking in a natural way here. The way that I'm trying to walk in this treadmill does not agree with how I'm actually walking in real life and how I'm therefore walking in the game. And it breaks the illusion. Yeah, this is a treadmill that worked. Don't know if anybody started reading Ready Player 2, but they have the answer in Ready Player 2. I'm loving it, by the way. Not to spoil anything of the storyline, the biggest problem that I have with Ready Player 2 is the start. The first 2 or 3 chapters are hard to get through because maybe because of the way that it's written, maybe it's because what it does. I'm not quite sure. But I think I'm about halfway through the book right now, and I'm really into it now. The story at this point is I really enjoy it. It's yeah. Ernie Klein, you did a nice job there. Whether it's as good as Ready Player One, I'll let you guys know when I finish the book. Um, but yeah, there is something new in that book that I hope does not become a reality anytime soon. I know it looks, and that's actually what the book is about as well. He actually makes the right points, not points he's the first one to make. By the way, it's been done before, and it's been done in interesting ways. And he actually he mentions those as well, which is kind of cool. He doesn't take credit for it. He acknowledges that some of the ideas are existing, sci-fi ideas. Yeah. Um, what was the other thing that I wanted to talk about that I suddenly had spring into my mind when I was talking about Ready Player One? Lost it now. Um, yeah, it's not actually VR related. Nah, never mind. Just thinking about The Last of Us 2. I don't know if there's any Last of Us fans on my chat. I'm a big fan of the first game. Um, I'm also an outlier that I really love the second game. Um, but while I've played The Last of Us 1 multiple times, I can't bring myself to play The Last of Us 2 for a second time. And I have some good reasons for that. But um, not quite sure if that is material for my stream. Hey, Declan, thank you for joining. Yeah, it's really dark here because it's almost 1 a.m. I think I'm gonna end it soon myself as well. Because I need some sleep. I need to get back out of bed early tomorrow because I got to get my car to the mechanics. So yeah, busy day. So yeah, fun and games and stuff. I wonder what will come locomotion wise. I've seen a couple of things that are very fun, but again, um, very circumstantial. Very one of my I was involved a year or two ago. I was helping out these guys who were making this VR hoverboard thing, which is I don't know what happened to that. I've kind of lost contact with these guys. I hope to reconnect with them at some point. Because it was a great idea that they had, and they got pretty far with actually developing and releasing this as a product. But yeah, it's one of those things where I guess the market didn't see the potential enough. Maybe they still do. I don't know where. But I do also believe that you have to make the right game for it. If you make a game with that peripheral in mind, you can create some really cool VR experiences. And they had a few demos as well that they had up and running that were really good. And I wish I was a better game designer in that. Because, here, when you look at the car thing that I'm making, it's all about the technique, right? And the same thing with the space game that I'm making. It's all about technique. It's all about getting the techniques to work. And I know for both of these, this is never going to. I'm never planning to build this into a full racing game. This is all about the tutorials around building a game like this. While my space game, I really want to take that to the next level at some point next year. Like I said many times before on stream, that means that at some point I'm going to reach my limits as a programmer. Someone who is not a game designer, someone who's not a graphics artist, someone who is not, I know how my way around Blender, but I'm not a great 3D modeler. So at some point in time, I'm going to have to take my ugly fabrications and work together with someone who is good at that and complete that. I just want to build the framework that will allow me to build the game that I want and to get there. And that's sort of where where I couldn't help these guys out. I had everything working in Godot with the device. I just didn't have the people around me who could provide me with the assets and the designs that I could use to turn that into something fun. They had some other people working for them at some point in time that did that in Unity. They had, therefore, a few really nice experiences in Unity. But it's just not enough. You know, you need more people that to be able to do something like that, to put a product like that in the market. And again, like I said, I've lost contact with them. I hope to regain contact at some point in time. I hope that their product, they're still working on it, and that they can, you know, that they're still going to release it at some point in time. Because I think they had a really good concept there. So, well, wow, we really have people from everywhere all over the world. Ukraine, Portugal, England. Very cool, guys. I'm you know, I'm humbled, especially considering that, you know, for most of you it'll be Friday in the middle of the you know, middle of the day. So I'm guessing, you know, you're either at work or, you know, you're supposed to be at school. So yeah, thanks for joining me. I know the last hour was mostly just talking and you know, vibing. I hope the what we've done with the car tonight, you know, it was not completely VR, somewhere halfway there, because obviously, you know, I do have the VR support in this game, but I really wanted to get the gear stuff working properly. Like I said before, at some point in time, I want to revisit this and turn this into part 6 of the tutorial series. I really hope to get back into that very soon. But like I said at the beginning of my stream, my personal life at this point in time is not providing me with the opportunity to spend the time that I need to spend on that. I hope to have news soon that will allow me to change that. So we'll see. So yeah, England. Very cool. All right, so I'm going to leave it there for tonight. I might do a couple more streams on this. Again, like I said, I'm going to get my steering wheel in soon. So I really want to get this to a point where I can actually have some fun with that. So I might do that for 2 or 3 more streams, and then we're going to go back to our space game, because obviously I want to continue on my space game. But again, the same time limitation issues that I'm having right now is affecting that project, because I'm at a point right now where I need to start designing some stuff and working some things out before I can actually do a stream that's meaningful, because else I'm just going to sit here staring at a piece of paper, and that's not going to be a fun stream, right? So we're going to come back to that very shortly, as soon as I get some things worked out. So yeah, so probably next week we're just going to continue with our little racing game, and hopefully I'll turn some of this stuff into the next parts of the tutorial, so that people who don't want to watch a 4-hour stream get up to date as well. So that's it, I think, for me tonight, guys. Thanks again so much for joining. I hope to see you again all next Friday. And yeah, have a great day. Have a great night wherever you are. And I'll see you guys next time.